Williams just last month. When I got my license, I live in Burnsville, like 5 minutes from the office, actually. And I'm just excited to get going and see what this is all about.
Awesome. All right, Grace, you're up.
Hi, everybody. Good morning. I'm Grace. I just got my license in August, so I'm fairly new as well. And I live in Apple Valley, only like, I would say less than 10 minutes from the office.
Awesome. And Jennifer. There
Okay. Hello. Can you hear me? All righty. My name is Jennifer. I am currently in school, just really starting out. Yeah, and I am down in Waterville, so it's about 45 minutes. So from the office.
Thank you, Jennifer. And Eli?
My name is Eli. I actually just had my onboarding meeting on Wednesday, and so just starting out, and I'm currently in Farmington and need experience and all it. Oh.
Awesome. You're welcome. Marjona?
Morning, guys. I live in Burnsville, and I'm still currently in the school process, so I'm fairly new still.
Awesome. Thank you for being here. And Candy?
Hi, I'm still learning. I'm taking the slow road, unfortunately, but I'm just staying plugged in so I can learn and gather every piece of information.
Awesome. All right, so I'm gonna go grab Sammy so she can switch to the camera, because we'll use a different camera so that Colin can look at you instead of having to go like this and make it be super awkward. So I'm gonna let you introduce yourself and I'll get the camera switched.
All right, Candy, I agree with you. I too am still learning. I think everybody should still be learning every day. My name's Colin Manson. I have been licensed just about 7 years, I guess. 7 years in the spring, I think. So 6.5, we'll call it. Yeah, I've been 100% active as an agent, just over 6 years. My background is actually in civil engineering. I'm still a licensed civil engineer to this day. I worked way too hard to get it. I'm not going to let it slip away. And yeah, I decided that I'd had enough of my previous life and decided it was time for a change. So on Friday, I walked out of my office for the last time, and on a Monday morning, I walked into a new office for the first time, and here I am over 6 years later. So, all right, perfect. That's gonna be, you know what? Let's move this back a little bit.
The table.
Yep, and then
you can pace.
I can pace, I can do my pace thing.
You know you like to pace.
Yes.
Zoomed as far out as
All right,
possible.
perfect, that's good.
There you go.
Now I've got room to move. Okay, this feels a little bit better. I can look at people now. All right. So one thing I am going to encourage everyone to do, if at all possible, for these classes, I'm going to ask you guys to come into the office for them. And the reason I ask that of you is because I've got a bunch of handouts that I can't give you when you're at home. And those handouts, I can guarantee you, are going to save you a pile of time as you move forward, working with sellers. Probably gonna make you a bunch of money too. So if you want those handouts, you have to come to see me. So in the future, if at all possible, please come in for these classes. I can't stress enough how much more interactive these are when you guys are sitting in the room with me. I can guarantee you there are going to be things that come up when you're sitting here in the room that just absolutely will not come up via Zoom. It's just a different atmosphere, I can promise you. So I'm going to do my best for you, but that's my little sales pitch for you to come into the office. Save time and make more money. Who doesn't like that? All right. So everyone is fairly new in their real estate journey, right? Has anyone signed a buyer or a seller yet? I haven't heard a yes or a no.
I have a client meeting next week, but I have not signed anybody yet.
Awesome. Okay, so you've gotten to the point where you set an appointment.
Yes.
Awesome. That's great, Grace. All right. I'm going to back up one more step. I think, Grace, you've been in one of my classes before, right?
I might have. Yeah, I've been to pretty much every class provided since I joined in August.
Yeah, I'm pretty forgettable, so I don't fall.
Well, I've been to your house, Colin, for happy hour.
Yes, that's true. That's true. Okay, so rule number one in all of my classes go two ways. I'm not the only one that speaks in my classes. You too will speak in my classes because I need interaction. I don't know what you guys are thinking, what you're grasping, what you're not, if I'm not hearing anything back from you, okay? So I'm gonna ask that, and especially when we're doing stuff via Zoom, I need to get some kind of feedback from you guys because I have no idea, I can't read you, right? Number two, the reason we turn the camera and the reason we move the tables is because I pace when I talk. And if you don't like it, hang up now because I can't stop it. The only way I can stop it is if Jessica puts me in a chair and duct tapes me to it. So this is the way it's gonna work. All right. So Grace, you set an appointment.
Yes.
Otherwise, okay, great. So otherwise, we have not gotten to the point where we have been in front of a buyer or seller yet.
Other than at open houses, no.
Okay, great. No, that's good too. That's good too. So my next question was going to be who has a background where they have worked with people one-on-one, work environment, professional environment, maybe some sales experience. Who's done what in their previous lives? Free for all. Whoever wants to answer first, just go.
You mean outside of real estate?
Sure.
Don't laugh, but I used to sell rainbows.
Okay. I'm not gonna laugh at that.
It's like a vacuum cleaner.
Yep.
So I would go house to house and demonstrate and take it apart, pick up their dirt, and do a sales pitch and encourage them why it's a good thing to buy.
Okay.
And I did sell them because then I got a free one.
Okay. Awesome. That's really good. I like that, Candace. There's nothing to laugh about it. As far as I'm concerned, absolutely everything we do throughout our careers can be applied to real estate. Everything you've ever learned somehow can be applied to real estate. You just have to figure out how. Okay, who else?
I was a waitress and a bartender for like 7 years prior to this.
Perfect. You know who makes some of the best real estate agents?
Waitresses and bartenders.
This is bartenders, teachers.
Yeah, and I also was a trainer too. So I helped open up a restaurant at the airport at MSP, and I also helped train in the entire staff.
Wow,
Yep.
awesome.
Yep. You know who doesn't make very good real estate agents?
Hmm.
Civil engineers.
That's-
And here I am 6 years later.
That's not true.
All right, who else?
Before this, I always was in retail, just kind of bouncing around in retail.
Okay, so you were dealing with people face to face on a daily basis.
Yep.
All right. Well, I certainly see similarities there. All right, Jennifer, Kylie.
I'll go. I have no sales experience. My background is mainly in inventory and like secretarial work. I also served for about a year and a half. I would say that's really the only like public face-to-face experience I have though.
Okay,
In my
let
background.
me ask you this, Kylie. Great answer, I appreciate it. In your inventory work, your secretarial work, did you ever have to deal with other people? Or did you somehow manage to go through your job without ever talking to another colleague, a boss, a subordinate? Let me ask you that.
No, there was people, no, all day, every day.
Okay, all right. So you too were dealing with people face to face in one way or another. Did I hear that right?
Yes. Thank you for correcting me.
Well, not correcting, just
No, you're right. You're right.
opening people's eyes to how we all somehow have that one-on-one experience. Jennifer.
I was a competitive cheer coach, so I was constantly dealing with cheer parents, cheer moms, girls, kids, families, organizing, flying people across the country to events. So
if you were dealing with parents, you probably had the biggest challenge out of everybody so far. And it's funny because it's true. All right, that's awesome. All right, who else? I'm just looking at the board. Did we get through? Marjona.
Hi guys. I used to work in the bank, so I dealt with customers every day. So I got a lot of experience from them.
All right. So as far as I can see, everybody, no matter what their background is in, has had an opportunity to be face to face with people. You've had the opportunity to figure out how to work with people. You've figured out that people have different personalities, different ways of going about doing things. And somehow, some way, you figured out how to adapt to all those different personalities, needs, what scenarios, issues. And we've all succeeded to the point that we've made it to today. So I think if we just think about that and apply it to what this business is, we can all realize that, hey, you know what? I've already got a good portion of what this business is all about. I've already got experience in that. Does that make sense? Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about sellers and getting listings. So what I'd like to do, the approach I'd like to take is just talk a little bit about how we're going to assume that we have a person to talk to, and I am going to tell you what I do from the time I initiate communication with that person until the time I leave the listing appointment. Okay, we're going to run through that pretty quickly. We're going to do it in another, 20 after 9? We're going to have this done within an hour, okay? So when I get someone on the phone and I am speaking with them about the opportunity to set an appointment to come and list their home, what are some of the first things that I am going to key in on in that conversation? What would you want to key in on as you are speaking with someone for the first time, looking to set an appointment to go list their home? Just throw out some ideas.
Talk about their home that they want to sell or potentially sell.
Okay, and what do you mean by that, Eli?
Basically ask them all the questions that you could possibly ask about the house, like bedrooms, bathrooms, just all that kind of stuff.
Okay, so looking to learn more about the property itself and what the property entails.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, all right. What else might we want to look for as we begin speaking with someone?
I think you can ask them how much profit they want to make out of it, or what their goal is.
Okay, what their goals are, what they're looking to achieve maybe financially from the sale. Okay, all right, I like that. What else?
I would say like their body language, their attitude, their personality, try to get to know them so that you know how to handle them and who you're working with.
I really like that answer. All the answers have been good, but I really like that one. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Okay, what else? Any other ideas? All right, let's touch on the last comment made about personality. Everyone has met a stranger in the past that has a similar personality or personality that's just really easy to talk to, right? And how does that make you feel when you connect with someone who is just easy to get along with and easy to talk to? What's your reaction to that?
I would say comfortable and confident in the situation when you feel like you can talk to somebody.
Perfect. Love the comfortable answer. That's actually the word that I had in my mind, comfortable. When you meet someone for the first time or speak with them for the first time, the more comfortable they feel, likely the more open they will be in their communication with you. And the more open they are in their communication with you, the more confidence and trust that will be built in that conversation. And who do we want to do business with? Just in our everyday lives, who do we want to do business with? If you are going to buy a new car, do you want to do business with someone that you just kind of have a weird gut feeling about, maybe don't really trust? Or do you want to do business with someone that you feel comfortable with, seems trustworthy, and has your best interest in mind? Pretty easy answer, right? So our goal from the first time we talk to that seller is to start building a comfortable conversation, have them open up to us, and build trust. Does that make sense? Okay, so how do we make them comfortable with us? We talked about personalities, right? Well, when we are on the phone with someone, we're going to know pretty quickly what type of personality they are if we're really, really listening. So who has gone through or heard of the DISC profile before? DISC. Okay. One of your homework items is to Google the DISC profile and take a look at what those 4 different personality types are. So D is the driver. That's your type A personality. They are short, sweet, to the point. They want to know the answer and they want to get on with it. They hate wasting their time. I is kind of a more intuitive personality. They go by feel. They are the one that once they start talking, you can't shut them up, right? They want to know everything about you, your dog, your mom, and your best friend from 20 years ago. Everything with them is emotion and how they feel. And S is a very stable personality. They're the people that don't want to rock the boat. They want to make sure everybody is getting along. They don't like conflict. Smooth and steady is who the S person is. And C tends to be more your technical type people. All right, they like facts, figures. You can tell them something, but if you can't back it up with data, they're not going to believe it. And even if it's right in front of them, they're probably going to do their own research to make sure you are right in the data that was provided. Everybody knows somebody from each one of those categories, right? You can picture them in your mind right now. So when you are on the phone with someone, knowing how they're responding to your questions, you need to keep that in mind so that you can tailor your conversation with them to their personality style. Because guess what? If you've got that driver speaking to someone who is a high I, the driver doesn't care what that person's dog's name is and how cute they are after they get their grooming done, and oh, they like to run and doze snow with their nose. The driver doesn't care about that. So if you approach a high D as an I, you're going to drive them nuts. They want to know what the answer is. Let's get to the answer and let's move on. So these are things that we want to listen for in the questions that we ask. So as I'm speaking with a potential seller, I've got a whole list of things on my handout that I am going to ask them. It's going to be what their motivation is. Where are you going next? Someone tell me what that one question can reveal in this conversation. Great, you're interested in selling your home. Where are you going next? What's the benefit of that question? I got time.
Maybe how quickly they want to sell. What?
Okay. All right.
Or I suppose you just said this, baby, where are you moving to?
Yep. Where are you moving to? Yep. Okay, so what's the benefit of asking that question?
You could potentially buyer's agent as well.
Oh, now I'm not looking at one deal, I'm looking at two deals. Okay, I like that. Good answer. What else?
Well, wouldn't you want to know how long that it's all about time?
That might help reveal what the time frame is. Absolutely. And we can ask that question, but the one question, where to next? It's going to reveal a lot because it's an open question. And it might help reveal their personality and some of their beliefs and a whole lot of things. So that's a great question to ask, because now I know, well, I'm actually staying right in the area. I want to stay right in Lakeville. And yeah, we're just looking for a bigger house because we've got twins on the way. Hear it all the time. All the time. All right, well, what does that mean? We've got twins on the way. Chances are we've got motivation. And now we're beginning to set the timeline. Is this all making sense?
Yes.
All right, so now we're starting to discover motivation. We're starting to discover timeline. As Eli said, we're going to ask about the property. I always like to ask them, what happens if your house doesn't sell?
You cry.
Maybe. But for a D, they don't care about crying. Crying wastes time, right?
Yep, you're right.
So what does that question tell us? I don't even care what the answer is. What's that question tell us? How about the fact that, well, if it doesn't sell, I'll just stay put. All right, now we've got an idea what the motivation is. This might be a fishing expedition. I'm just gonna see if I can get top dollar for my property. If it doesn't sell, I don't care. All right. I'm gonna have to ask more questions surrounding that because I need to know, am I dealing with a serious seller or am I dealing with somebody that's gonna waste my time? You guys might notice that I probably have a little bit of that D part of the.
Yes, I noticed it right away.
Yep, there you go. There you go. I do have a little bit of emotion too, it just doesn't come out very often.
It's rare.
Very rare, Jessica says, very rare. So the answer to that question is also going to reveal a lot for us. Yeah, well, it has to sell. Because like I told you, we have twins coming and we need a bigger house. And this has to happen because we are already bursting at the seams. I don't have room for 2 more. Awesome. This is who I want to speak with. When I ask about the property itself, a couple of things I want to ask. Have you made any significant improvements in the last 5 to 10 years? Well, I don't know. What do you mean by that? Oh, I don't know. Have you finished a basement, remodeled the kitchen? I want to know, am I walking into something that's fresh out of 1973? Or am I walking into something that probably has the layout of something in 1973, but they've gone through and redone the whole property? Because that helps me understand what comps I should be looking at. So to your point, Eli, questions about the property, very important. The other one I like to ask, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the condition of your property? 1 being we should knock it down and start over, 10 being it may as well be brand new construction. The follow-up question is, okay, Eli, you mentioned you believe your home to be a 7. What would make it a 9? Why do I want to ask that question?
So you know where they can improve in their house or how to make that part of the house either look better or just minor improvements that you can make to make it look better.
That's the end result. And that's a good answer. I asked the question because number 1, it's an open question and allows them to talk. And the more they talk, the more I get to know their personality. If they take 10 minutes describing the things that need to be done to get it from a 7 to a 9, I know they're going to be very detail oriented. If I hear, I don't know, probably some carpet, paint, that should be good. Probably a D, right? So again, all these questions, I'm paying attention to what their answers are so I can identify personality and I can get them to think, what are the faults in my home, and help me understand how far do we have to take this thing to get them top dollar. As I go on, I will flat out ask them, or I'll make a statement. Obviously, you're considering selling. I'm guessing you've done some research and some homework. What do you think the value of your home is today, in today's market? You'll get a couple of different answers. They'll either give you a number, they'll give you an I don't know, or that's why I'm talking to you. I ask the question because I want to know what their expectation is. The other question I'll ask, how much money do you need to make in your pocket when you walk away from this sale in order to move on to your next opportunity? Because if I hear somebody tell me they think their house is worth $500,000 and they need to walk away with $500,000, something doesn't make sense, because I'm gonna get paid to do this. And I'm starting to question what's going on with this person. They know that I need to get paid to do this, so why are the numbers not adding up? The other thing that might reveal, and you can ask the question, the other thing that might reveal, are they behind? And I will never ask if they are behind. I will ask, is everything up to date on the house? Are payments current on the house? I will never ask, are you current with your payments on the house? Because that makes it personal. So that first phone call is ultra important to set the stage for the appointment. You're figuring out personality, you're figuring out condition of the home, you're figuring out if they've made significant changes. I can't tell you how many times I have gone to a property where the county records say one thing and the house is completely different. I've had the county records say that I've got a completely finished basement, and I walk into the house and that basement is absolutely not finished. It's gonna make a big difference in my comps, isn't it? So these are all things that we're asking to make sure that we're sharp on our appointment. The first several listing appointments you end up going on, I'm going to encourage you, go drive the neighborhood. Pull your comps. If you can, go preview them. Go look at what's on the market and active. Drive past your subject properties. Drive past the properties that you have as comps. Drive past the house that you were looking to list. You want to be familiar with the neighborhood. They're going to know what's for sale and what has sold in their neighborhood, so make sure you are familiar with everything that is sold, not just the ones that are similar to theirs. Make sure you know what is sold. Oh, my neighbor's just sold for $750. Yeah, well, your neighbor's was twice the size, and it was built 20 years after yours. It's brand new. Totally different house. So be familiar, because they know what's next door. So as I wrap up that first phone call, my script for them is great. I appreciate this information. The next logical step is going to be for us to find a time to get together where I can take a look at your home. I'll bring along some comps. We'll see what the market is dictating for value. I can talk to you a little bit about my marketing, and from there we can talk about next steps. What works best? Daytime, evening, or weekends? We're going to get an answer. Evenings are best. Great. What does evening mean to you? I know what it means to me. I don't know what it means to them. Oh, anything after 4. That's still afternoon in my book. I'm glad I asked, because I was going to offer an appointment at 7 o'clock. I don't want to work at 7 o'clock. By asking the right questions, I just set an appointment for 4:30 instead of 7. Can we see where the benefit in that is? We all on board? I see notes being taken, so I appreciate it. So once that appointment is set, that's when the background work begins. I'm going to take all my notes, going to run comps. That's a totally different class. We don't have time to go into all that. Running comps, like I said, drive the neighborhood, educate yourself on what is on the market And for those properties that are on the market, go preview them. Because you know what you can't tell from a picture? You can't tell that the house smells like smoke. And you can't tell that the photos have been processed very well and every single wall needs to be repainted. The baseboards are all junk and the windows are rotten. So educate yourself on the neighborhood. Over time, as you gain experience, you'll have to do less of that because you'll just be able to tell and you'll know based on your gut feeling on value. But when you're starting out, you better come in as well prepared as possible because number one, it's going to serve your client better. And number two, you're going to feel way more confident when you believe that you've got all the data to back up your thoughts. How are we doing so far? Good?
Good. Taking lots of notes.
Good. A lot of work goes into that first phone call and preparing for the listing appointment, doesn't it?
Yep.
Can you guys see the importance of that pre-qualification call? Talking to that seller in detail before you start preparing and before you go out to the property? Can you see why it would make sense to never step that or skip that step? Okay. So once I have prepared for the listing appointment, on the day of the appointment, I am going to make sure that I leave the office with plenty of time to get there. Because what is one habit of real estate agents that runs rampant across the whole industry?
We're late.
Late.
We're late. And normally it's because we're trying to put 10 pounds in a 5-pound bag, right? If you want to differentiate yourself from everybody else, show up on time. Right there, you are different than the majority of agents out on it in the market. So be ready, show up on time. Don't check your email before you walk into the appointment. Chances are there's a crappy email that came through on another deal that you're working on. You don't want to be in a bad mood when you walk in the front door. When the clock hits 4:30, you better be knocking on the door. I will walk in, I will thank them for inviting me to their home. I will take my shoes off, and I will ask them where a good spot to put my things is. Where's a good spot for us to talk? Where can I set down my things? Usually it's going to be the kitchen table. We'll walk in, and I'm just telling you how I do it. I'm not saying that this is the way to do it. This is how I do it. I'll walk in, I'll set my items down, I'll make some small talk. They will inevitably either lead or wait to be led with the question as to what happens next. So I'll set my things down and I'll just lay out how I want this to happen. Great. I'll make a joke. I'll ask them, where does the boss sit? And they'll look at me and I'll say, no, really, where does the boss sit? Well, the boss doesn't, there is no boss. There is no boss's spot. Where would you like me to sit? Because I don't want to sit in the boss's spot. And then I'll tell them a story as to how I chose the wrong chair at a listing appointment one time, and I got stared at like I had just stolen $100,000 out of their safe or something. Like these people were just flabbergasted that I took the wrong seat at the table. So I will always ask, I'll tell them that little story and they'll always chuckle and say, nah, you don't have to worry about that here. I'll say, great. Well, what I'd like to do is take just a few minutes, walk around the house, I'm gonna take a look at it through a buyer's eyes. I'm gonna look at your home. You can certainly describe it to me if you'd like, or I can walk on my own, whatever you prefer. We'll take 5 minutes, take a look at the home. I'll take some notes, and then we'll come back, we'll sit down. I can certainly answer any questions you have. We'll talk about who I am, who my team is, how we market your property. We'll take a look at some of the comps that have recently sold in your neighborhood. And from there, we can talk about next steps and what it looks like to get your home listed. Does that make sense? And of course, what's the answer going to be? Yep, that makes sense. What did I just do in that script? What was one of the key phrases in that script?
Does that make sense?
Yep. Yep, I'm getting buy-in. There's one other that I'm thinking of, though. We'll talk about what the next steps are and what it looks like to get your house listed. I just sold them on the idea that we're going to be listing their house, and we'll talk about what it looks like to get those next steps going. I just want to plant that seed in their mind 4, 5, 6 times throughout our conversation. You can even go so far on your pre-qualification call at the very end to say, this all sounds great. I'm looking forward to meeting with you. When we meet, if you are happy with our meeting, you like what I have to say, are you going to be ready to list your property at that time? I want to know, should I be bringing paperwork? You're selling it right on the pre-qualification call. You haven't even met them yet, okay? So most of the time they're going to want to walk you through the house. Some people think that's great. Others don't want to do it that way. They want to walk on their own, usually because they can do it much more quickly. People are proud of their house. They want to show you the extra closet that they convinced the builder to put in, right? People are proud of their stuff, right? They want to explain it to you because, you know, those LED lights, that's going to be worth at least 20 or 30 grand on the bottom line, right? So I'll usually walk through the house with them, come back and sit down at the kitchen table because we've already set the expectation as to how this is going to go. So they know what's going to happen. As we're walking through the property, I'm going to ask questions based on what I see on the walls. If they start talking about an improvement, there might be something I want to ask about that. I'm listening to what they're telling me, and I'm taking notes on the condition of the home. Does their home match what they told you? And I can tell you, you will have those that do and those that don't. And of those that don't, it goes 2 ways. They rate it a 7, and this thing should be in a magazine because it's a 10 plus, or they rate it a 7 and you get there and it's missing half the front windows. It will happen, I promise you. I promise you. So I am building rapport with these people as I walk through. Did we have a question? No? Okay, I thought I heard something. I am building rapport, and I am building rapport by asking them questions. What's important about asking the questions?
You get to know them better.
Yep.
And then it allows you to ask more questions because you got answers to ask questions on those answers.
You got it. Every answer provides an opportunity for another question. And when you are the one asking the questions, Who is in control of the conversation?
We are.
Exactly. Exactly. So just by asking questions, I can control what direction that conversation goes. When I come back and sit down at the kitchen table, I will ask them, as we talk further about the market, marketing, your property, etc., what are a couple of the most important things for us to discuss based on what questions you have or based on what you have thought of in preparation for our meeting? What is it absolutely critical that I touch on? Because frankly, I can talk about real estate blue in the face, but I don't want to bore you to death. So what do I have to make sure I touch on? That's going to identify what the hot buttons are for them. What are their burning questions? What are their biggest priorities? Now I've got to look forward and backwards.
Right, Marjan is in the room.
So usually what I will hear is, we really want to know what it's worth. We want to know what you charge. We want to know your suggestions. Those are probably the top three, I would say. Jessica, any?
Yeah.
I think those are probably the top three that I come across. So from there, you guys are going to have to develop your own style. What I like to do is give a little bit of background about myself, my team, like some stats about my performance as compared to other agents. You are not going to have that opportunity because you haven't personally done deals. However, our brokerage sure has. We'll probably do 2,100 deals this year. So the word "we" becomes very important, right? Use the brokerage, because being part of this brokerage, you technically are representing the buyers and sellers for every transaction that happens. Every agent in this brokerage is representing every buy and sell client of this brokerage. Right? Remember dual agency? That's what that means. Every deal that goes through this brokerage, we all represent those buyers and sellers. Okay? As I go through comps, you have to be a little bit careful. Sometimes, if you think you have just flat out missed it and you misread the property, maybe didn't ask the right questions, maybe they just didn't give you good answers to work off of. If your comps are nothing like what the property is, you may want to leave that bag in your, or that book in your bag. If you know for a fact, oh boy, I bombed it, don't pull out the comps. What I'll do in that case is I will look at them, give them the background, and say, you know what? Your home is far, hopefully nicer than I anticipated, or whatever script you want to use. You know what? I am going to need to take some time. I want to go back to the office. I want to do my homework now that I've seen your home firsthand. And I'm going to take a look at some comps. I'm going to study the market, and I'm going to let you know where we believe market value is. So if you think you've missed it, don't hesitate to sell them on a two-step appointment. Okay, one where you see the house, then you come back with comps. If you feel pretty good about what you brought, as you run through the comps with them, you're going to want to subtly identify the similarities and differences on those comps that you have. All right, if you've got a property that in your comps that you believe it's just flat out worth more than their house, make sure you point out why that one is worth more. As you can see, this one has, this one's got an absolutely gorgeous backyard. They probably have $50,000 worth of landscaping, and they've got that master bathroom that your home does not. So we know that this one has a few additional features as compared to yours. You don't want to knock their house because they love it. There's emotion there, right? On the flip side, maybe theirs is the one that has the stellar backyard and has a master bathroom that is to die for. You want to point that out. As you can see, this one, 4 doors down, very similar to yours. However, it doesn't have these certain upgrades. So you want to differentiate as you go through. When I get to the end of the comps, I will flat out ask them, based on what we have seen, where do you think your home falls in terms of value as compared to these properties? Sometimes they'll answer, sometimes they won't. Sometimes they think it's a negotiation somehow, and they want you to give a number. If that's the case, I usually tell them, listen, I've already got my numbers down on paper, so feel free to speak your mind. I want to ask them that question so I can see where their heads have gone based on the data that I've shared with them. The other thing that's very important is to have some data on what direction the market is headed. How many of you receive the Raw report every Wednesday via email? I haven't heard a yes or a no yet. Anyone?
No. No.
Oh, okay.
I think they if they're not
Well,
here yet.
we'll figure out, yeah, if you guys don't have an email address with the brokerage yet, that's part of the reason why. So Steve Rawl in our office has done it for a long time. He does a weekly report on activity in the market, 7-county metro area. And that is extremely valuable in knowing where the market is headed as compared to where it's been. And the value in that is being able to show people, yes, properties in May were selling at X dollar amount, but today you see that we have 40% more inventory than we did in May. And when we have more inventory, that means demand is dropping. So it's important to understand what direction the market is headed so that you can help them understand how we need to price the property to stay in front of the market. On the flip side, from 2020 to 2021, we saw properties absolutely skyrocketing in value. So you don't want to bring comps that are 3 months old and base your pricing off of comps that are 3 months old, because guess what? Those are probably 3 to 5% behind where the market is today, based on how quickly the market was changing over the last year. So you always want to price ahead, whether you're going up or down, you want to price ahead of the market. I will then review with them a seller's estimate of proceeds. That breaks down what their walkaway number is after all the fees that they're going to see. My fees, the buyer agent fees, as well as closing fees. I normally don't include a mortgage payoff. I will tell them that this does not include any mortgages or any debt on the property. You guys know what that number is and you can back it out. Black and white is important because there are some people that can absorb math and data very quickly, and there are others that become very, very anxious the second you talk about math. And you'll start talking numbers to them and it will go right over their heads and they will not grasp any of it. I can guarantee you all either know somebody or you are the somebody that just at the mention of math, it makes your skin crawl. There will be sellers that feel that way. When you can put it in black and white and point at the bottom line as to what their walkaway is, I can tell you I did not do that for 2 or 3 years when I started in this business, and the second I started doing it, my conversion rates went up astronomically. Because you can point at that bottom line number and say, is that something along the lines of what you were expecting? And the beauty is when they say, actually, I was expecting it to be a little bit lower. And I can respond by saying, well, that's great. I can increase my fees. So that question is important because when you see them starting to nod their heads as you go along, you know that we're in alignment, right? What I'm saying is catching hold. These people are on the same page as me. So when I can point to those numbers and they're on board with it, yeah, that makes sense. Now I know we're headed in the right direction. So the next question is, did you have any other questions or should we talk about next steps? They might have some questions. They might, it depends on what you've presented, right? And again, everyone's different. I don't have time to go through a whole listing presentation. Everyone's going to be a little bit different. How long does it take? So if we decide to go with you, how long before we can be on the market? Another one that I hear all the time, does it make sense for us to price it below the market so we can get into a bidding war and drive the price up? I've got an opinion on that. We've got 3 ways we can price a property. We can price it high, hope for the 1 in 100 buyer that'll pay that, and then slowly work our way down. We can price it appropriate to where the market tells us we should. We can make sure we maximize the number of showings and maximize our return because we're right in the ballpark and we know that when someone makes an offer, they're going to see the value in it. Or number 3, we can look at pricing it below the market with the hopes of having multiple offers. The only problem with that strategy is I cannot guarantee that there will be more than one person looking for what you are selling at the same time, willing to make an offer at the same time to cause that competition to drive the price up. So what happens if we market it under value and we only get one offer and they offer you asking price? When really you were hoping asking price, or you were hoping to end up 20,000 higher. Why don't we just market it at the price that the market is telling us it should be at? Because that's going to be most appealing to everybody. So hopefully they'll say, yeah, that's great. You've done a wonderful job. Let's talk about next steps. Great. Well, in order for me to legally market your property, we have to enter into an agreement for me to sell your property. So here's the paperwork, and we walk through it, and we talk about what my responsibilities are, what their responsibilities are, and the fact that I've got 200 agents in my brokerage that are going to be working to get their home sold. And then we talk about our pricing. So based on what we've looked at, where are you comfortable listing your home? Well, I think that 520 that we talked about, I think that makes sense. I don't want to be too high. I don't want to be too low. That seems reasonable. I agree. I think that's great. Fill out the listing paperwork and say, all right, let's get it done. You ready for me to get to work for you? Let's get this filled out and we'll move on. When I leave, if I do not have a signed listing agreement, I will absolutely have a time that I am going to reach back out to them. If they don't sign, I will ask them, what is causing you hesitancy? It's usually one of a few things. You have questions about my marketing. You have questions about price. Or you have questions about my fees. Which is it? There are flat out some people that are not going to sign documents on the spot. They want to review them. They want the technical people are going to want to read those documents, I guarantee it. You will have some that just don't sign. If I'm walking out, somebody hasn't signed, I will have an absolute time frame that I am going to follow up with them. How do I establish that? How do I establish when I'm going to get back in touch with them?
Ask them when a good time to contact them is.
Just ask the question. That's it. That's it. When's a good time for me to reach back out? Well, you know, we really want to get this moving, so let's see, tonight it's Tuesday night. Yeah, why don't you call us Thursday morning? Perfect. What's a good time? 10 a.m. I've got a break at 10 a.m. Perfect. I'll talk to you then. What's that follow-up call look like? Hey, Jennifer, it's Colin Manson, Keller Williams Preferred Realty. You had asked me to give you a call back here Thursday, 10 a.m. and just keeping my promise on that. Just wanted to check in. How did the discussion go about me listing your home? Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. When I walk out of an appointment, I will thank them for the opportunity. There's nothing nicer than having a person that's looking to earn your business thank you for the opportunity to do so. And I am truly thankful for the opportunity. So why not say it to them? I've really enjoyed our time together. Nice spending a little bit of time getting to know you guys. Thank you so much for the opportunity. All right, questions in a nutshell. That's kind of the process. For me, questions, thoughts, what have you learned? Jessica, what did I miss?
Maybe a little bit about CMAs.
I don't know.
We've got videos and stuff.
Yeah, I mean,
And
I
I
don't-
mean, maybe just a little bit about, because I've had a lot of agents ask me like, how do I do a CMA or you know, ask questions about it, and they haven't asked the right questions of the seller.
Sure.
They haven't been there.
Yep.
You know, so like those kind of things, so that you have the best information to get a CMA, even if you haven't been there. Or maybe like a two-step or what, you know what I mean, that kind of stuff.
Well, okay, so those pre-qual questions are super important, right? When we have that first conversation, super important. Don't go short on that. Don't skip it. That's why I spent half an hour talking about it, right? Because it's so valuable in so many ways. Square footage, verifying the number of bedrooms and bathrooms. If you have, say, a story and a half in Richfield, you'd better know if there is a master bathroom on that half level, because that adds a ton of value. Because everybody loves a master bathroom, and very few of those have it. So you want to know the details. Location, school district. Do not compare properties that are not in the same school district. If you're in Plymouth, would you compare a property that is in the Wayzata School District to one that is in the Osseo School District? And if you did, what would happen? And that's a question.
Wouldn't be the right price,
Wouldn't be the right price. Why?
because they're not within distance of each other. They're not in the same neighborhood.
Well, they're not the same neighborhood, but the reason the price is different is because the public has put a different value on Wayzata schools than they have on Osseo schools. It is what it is. Properties sell for more in the Wayzata School District than they do in the Osseo School District. One for one, same property is going to sell for more. So we don't want to be looking at properties that are in different school districts. To the best of my ability, I am not going to bring a property that doesn't have the same city name on it. Even though you get the Robbinsdale, Crystal, that area, they tend to all kind of blend together and be the same. You want to, if the best you can, you want to have comps that are in the same city. Understand the neighborhoods. Spend time driving through the neighborhoods and look for trends. Usually major roads are good separators for different neighborhoods. And if there's going to be a difference in value, those major obstacles, whether it's roadways, train tracks, rivers, whatever the case is, that will have an impact. Be careful that you don't have properties that are on busy roads and compare them to those that are on a beautiful, quiet, secluded lot within the neighborhood. There's different value there. Think about what you like to see in a property, because chances are a lot of those things are going to be what other buyers like to see in a property. You want to be on a busy roadway? Some don't care. The majority don't want to be. So how do we accommodate for that in pricing? You can still sell a house on a busy road. They exist everywhere. How do you accommodate for it? It's got to be priced lower. It's got to be financially enticing for someone to say, all right, well, I can get it for 20 grand less, so I'll take it. Otherwise, the houses are the same. It's just that busy street, but for 20 grand, I can deal with it.
Colin, I have a question.
Yes.
If you're doing a CMA on a property and it's right next to, let's say, 35, should you do a comp for something that's across the highway, or should you stay on that same side of the highway?
It depends. I had a listing appointment I went on a few years ago in St. Louis Park. And it was an expired listing, or canceled, one of the two, I don't remember. And I looked at the price that it was listed at, and I thought, wow, that just seems ridiculously high. This doesn't make sense. So I started doing my homework, and their neighborhood was on the west side of Highway 100, just south of Excelsior. And when I looked at all the homes that were for sale on the east side of 100, they were $40 to $50 a square foot more than the houses on the west side. Different neighborhood. Different neighborhood. So when I sat down with those folks, I asked, how did you guys identify your listing price when you were on the market before? Well, the agent, came in and we were sitting at the table similar to what we're doing right now, and they pulled out their laptop and they started showing us houses for sale or that had sold. And I said, well, let me ask this, were they focusing on houses on the west side of the highway or the east side of the highway? They said, well, the east side. I said, well, you can see that those houses on the east side are selling for $50,000 to $60,000 more than what houses on the west side are. They said, yeah, we kind of thought that didn't make sense. Literally across 100.
Interesting.
If you are in Minneapolis and St. Paul, do not go outside of the neighborhood that they are in. Do not. I don't want to go more than a quarter mile if I'm in Minneapolis and St. Paul, because the neighborhoods can change so quickly. And if you don't know, ask. Just ask someone. Some of the newer developments, Lakeville's a good example, Branch Farms. There are portions of Branch Farms that were all custom built homes. Another phase was all kind of, national builders, big homes, nice homes, but they aren't what the originals were. Well, you can't compare those two homes because they're just not the same. They're not built the same. So look for trends. What's going on? Why are things selling for more in one location than another? And am I in that location or am I not in that location? What are the differences? This is nothing more than a bunch of puzzle pieces that you want to grab as many as you can. You're going to be missing pieces. That's all there is to it. Some kid threw a bunch down the toilet and flushed them, right? And you need to figure out how to fill in the gaps. It's a big puzzle. And all you can do is just do them over and over and over again. Take a property that's sold and run a CMA on it. Figure out why it sold where it did compared to the others. Just practice. That's the only way you get good at things, right? Just practice. Do it. Do it over and over and over again. Okay, what else? I've got about 3 minutes.
I have a question.
Yes.
Down here in Waterville, like around all the lakes and stuff in my area, it's a lot different because it's almost like two markets. There's lake properties, seasonal properties, and then like in-town properties.
Yep.
So, I mean, it's the price difference can be greatly extreme. So comparing those, do you compare different lakes or?
You can, but you have to know the lakes too.
Right, like Lake Francis compared to where I'm at would be different.
Yep. Is it a mud puddle lake or is it a beautiful recreational lake? It matters.
So
right?
like access.
Even the lake itself, is this property on a bay that's full of lily pads or is it on a bay that's wide open and beautiful year round?
Right.
It all matters, right? How are people going to enjoy that property, especially lake property? How are you going to enjoy it? Do you have to get the weed cutter to come out 4 times a summer so you can get your boat out of the lift and out onto the lake? Or is it absolute perfect, beautiful, crystal clear water? A lot of it is just common sense and logic, right? Look at it. Well, I don't know, is that appealing or is it not appealing? Do I think this looks nice or does it not look nice? I'm not talking about styles and whatnot. It just, am I comfortable? Does this look like a really nice neighborhood? Or is everything run down and, just use your head, logic, common sense. Don't get too caught up into the mechanics of it. Just stop, step back, look at the big picture. Does this make sense? What else? I probably have time for one more.
I got a question not related to the CMAs, but kind of what we were talking about earlier. As a new agent, how often should I be kind of practicing my scripts and like kind of what to say with certain questions and kind of stuff like that?
Every day. Every day.
Okay, for sure.
Yep. Find somebody that's further along than you are, or get a variety of people. Get some of your newer agent colleagues, get somebody that's seasoned. Just find some people that are willing to practice with you. Do it every day. I don't care if it's for 15 minutes every day. Just
okay,
do
cool.
it. Yep.
Thank you.
Yep, you bet.
Yeah, and there's a lot of agents here that are willing to do that, to practice. And then, I mean, The other thing too is in our Facebook group, once you get added to that, there's, you know, all the PC agents. You guys can just share numbers, and the thing is that it's the easiest if you just say, all right, every morning at 8, I'm gonna talk to you, or whatever, and you take the initiative and say, I will call you at 8, and we're just gonna go right into the role play. We're not gonna say like, oh, how you doing? Oh, I haven't had my coffee yet, blah, blah, blah.
No,
Like,
the
who
phone-
cares?
The phone rings, you answer the phone just like it's a lead.
Right. Because the more practice you have, the better you're gonna get, and then you won't feel like an idiot when you're talking to the real person.
Yep,
Because
and-
that always happens.
And the other part is the more you know your questions and your scripts, that allows you to focus on listening to the answers instead of worrying about what you're going to say next. Because if you're thinking about what you are going to say next, I will guarantee you that you are not listening to what is being said.
And then you'll ask the question that they just answered.
If you ask the question that they just answered, and it
Right.
happens all the time when you don't know your scripts, you will likely lose them.
Right. The biggest piece of advice I gave one of the agents 2 weeks ago when she did a listing appointment, she's competing a PC, she's competing against 3 other people. And I said, I want you to go and I want you to listen.
Mhm.
And she's like, oh my God. He talked about how this other guy came in and he was talking all about him and how great he was and he did this and he did that. And he said to her, you know, I chose you because you listened to me.
Yep. Make me feel important. All right, guys. Well, I'm going to cut it a couple minutes short because I have an 11 o'clock listing appointment that is 32 minutes away.
Oh.
So don't take my advice. Don't do what I do what I say. Because I don't have a whole lot of extra time. We'll just say there might be a few laws broken in the next half hour.
You're funny.
All right, guys. Well, thank you. Like I said, if you guys have the opportunity to be in here for these classes, I promise you, you will get more out of it. I appreciate different scenarios, but if you at all can do it, please come in.
Look, you talked 2 into coming.
Yep, look at
I
that.
was planning on coming.
All right, guys. Well, I hope you learned something. I hope it was of value. Seeing I'm a little bit higher on the D part of the disc profile, I don't like to waste people's time. So hopefully you found some value, and if you do have questions, let me know. Okay, guys?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It was great.
All right, everybody, you can have till 10:30 a break. And when you come back, make sure your camera's on. And Chase will be talking about negotiations and offers and things like that. So I'll give you 5
Yeah,
minutes.
have fun.
You too. Good luck.
Thanks. Good skill is what I like to say.
Yeah, good skill. I took my disc assessment. Where do I get the results?
It should email you back.
Because it said somebody will contact you shortly, and then I never got it.
I'm just in. How many are you?
So we have a bunch on Zoom, and what we did was, Grace and Marjona came in while Colin was presenting, but he just presented like this. And then they all have their cameras on and interacting that way, so we can maybe have, you could maybe move this table up and have these guys sit here so that it's all kind of closer.
I have I have something to display.
Okay, so then what we'll do is we can do it where we split the screen.
Okay.
You can have Zoom up here, and then what we'll do is we'll share your document from this.
Yep.
So if you email it to Taylor.
It's a PowerPoint.
Oh, it's a PowerPoint? I think they can still be emailed to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we'll pull it up here
Okay.
on this computer.
Okay.
And then we'll have that, and then we'll kind of have it over a little bit, but then it'll be all on their screens.
Okay.
And then we'll be able to see them on this side.
Cool.
Because always a thing.
So send that.
Yeah, because he's better at
Or do I just want to hook up my? Oh, 'cause
that.
then
No,
we've got to
hooking
have
up a
this.
computer is,
Yeah.
makes it complicated.
Yeah, we don't wanna
It's
make-
always something.
We don't want to make it complicated.
No, we don't want complications.
So,
Hi.
are people on break or?
Yeah, till 10:30.
Okay. I'm Chase. I'm the
Hi,
next
Chase.
person helping you guys.
Awesome.
How has it went so far?
Good.
Who was the last person?
Colin.
Oh, okay. That's
Oh,
what.
listing appointments.
Yeah, I figured Colin would go long. Normally he does.
He has a listing appointment at 11 and it's like 32 minutes away, he said, so he had to leave early.
Okay, I see. Good.
Yeah, see you soon. Hello, sir.
Hey, how are you?
Good. So what we were doing is we had almost everybody on Zoom.
Okay.
And then I can have, I don't know if you're okay, like, so the camera is pointing this way. So Colin, yeah, like that. So you can just talk here. So
Okay.
Colin likes to pace, so he was like going all
Right.
over the place. But you know, if whatever's comfortable for you, but we do ask that they all turn on their cameras so you can have good participation and, you know, I can, if these two want to move up, we can do that, whatever.
Okay, yeah, well, the more interactive, the better, obviously. 'Cause,
Right.
I'm doing kind of questions.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. And then if you only want to go an hour, that's totally fine. Tammy is, I only give her half an hour
Okay.
for TC, and that's not enough time.
Oh, okay.
So if you want to shorten it, you can.
Yep,
It's
okay.
whatever you're comfortable with, so.
And do you just want me to tell Tammy when we're?
I can, I'll go let her know.
Okay, and you're
And-
gonna stay involved?
Yeah, I'll stay in here. So I just need to
Yeah.
run to the bathroom.
And what experiences are we, and I can ask?
Yeah, so everybody is, new, or is still in school. So, if you wanna, yeah, we just have everybody kind of go through, like I just say, where do you live? What's your experience level? And, that's pretty much it. But then, so you get an idea of where they're at too.
That would be great, yeah. Wait, let me know when everybody's back in.
Yeah, I think Margella just went to the bathroom. And
Yeah, she's on a phone call too.
okay, so, I'm gonna run to the bathroom, when I come back, we
Okay.
can start it up.
Okay.
I should have brought some food. I'm starving.
I'm gonna go get some after this. There's some decent places around, you live around here?
Is there what?
I said there's some decent places around here. Are you familiar, or do you live in
Yeah,
the area?
I'm from St. Paul, but I live in Apple Valley.
Oh.
So I went from living in Inver Grove to then I live in Egan and then Apple Valley, so.
Okay, South Metro first.
Yeah, I'm everywhere all the time. So not so much towards like the Savage side, like Burnsville Savage. I don't really go down there that much, but
Yeah.
like definitely more towards like Apple Valley, Rosemont, Inver Grove.
Okay,
So I'll probably stop somewhere.
yeah, well, there's, I don't know, there's a Chipotle close. I like I like pho when it gets cold, so
Love
in the
pho.
Pho Valley,
It's my favorite place ever.
yeah.
Oh, they have Thai tea there.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
It is so good. We
yeah.
me and my boyfriend usually we go and we get massages and
Uh,
then we stop at pho afterwards and we have like nice warm pho with like Thai teas.
where do you get massages?
It's called Heavenly Asian Massage. It's like right off 77.
Okay, is
they're
it
like a
the
really
one
small-
77 and Dot?
77 and is it Diffley? 77 and Diffley.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Up north, okay.
Yep.
Yep.
It's like right across from a gas station, you would like not even know that it was a massage place, but then you go and you're like, oh yes, it's a massage place.
Yeah, there's a pretty good one, kind of like that down off of 77 and Don in Lakeville
okay.
by like Cub there. And
Okay.
there's Caribou. I live down that way, so yeah, if I need like a quick one where they're always, open, you don't have to
Yeah.
schedule in advance.
That's so great,
Yeah.
especially when it gets cold like this. Oh my gosh, I wish Olive Garden was closer.
Oh,
I just love like the soup from Olive Garden.
yeah, the Zupa soup.
Yes,
Yeah.
oh, and I make homemade zupa. But sometimes like when I'm in a pinch, I'm like, no, I just want like a soup and a salad for lunch. Like I wish it was closer. And I don't want to pay DoorDash because it's so outrageous.
Right.
Delivery fees, but
Yeah, we sadly do way too much DoorDash, so I think with one of our cards, we get it for really cheap, we're on like monthly or whatever.
oh, the Dash
We
Pass.
get the Dash Pass for
Yeah.
free through our card, so then the delivery isn't crazy.
Yeah, I suppose.
Yeah.
I guess that probably helps a lot. 'Cause sometimes those delivery fees are like $4.99.
Oh, yeah.
It's
no,
ridiculous.
I think there's no delivery fee, through the Dash Pass deal, but then.
Yeah, it's like $9 to $10 a month or something.
Yeah, you still feel like you should take a tip, so.
Well, absolutely. I would rather leave a bigger tip than pay delivery.
Right.
That's being a former waitress and bartender, I would rather leave a bigger
Okay, so I was gonna ask you what you did before this, is that, or what, are you gonna try to do both, or do you have a job right now?
Well, so no, yeah, waitress and bartender. My family owns a bar in Cannon Falls that I bartended at for years.
Cool.
And then I was in Egan bartending, and then I worked at the airport, Terminal 1. They opened up a restaurant out there, so I helped like train a bunch of agents or a bunch of servers there.
Sure.
And did that for like 6 months, but then COVID happened, and they laid everybody off.
Jeez.
And that's when I got into school. And so I'm trying to do this full time, but like I'll probably, I am pickup only and like part-time at the Cowboy Jacks right in Apple Valley.
Oh, yeah.
For like the last, I want to say like 4 months.
What, pickup meaning, like you'll just pick up shifts?
Pick up shifts when I need them.
Okay.
Yep, so like we have an app that lets people like release their shifts if they can't work it. And then I can just pick it up. Be like, yeah, I'll work that for you. So I don't actually have a schedule that's given to me every week. I just pick up, or they'll call me like, hey, can you come in tonight and work on it? Yeah, sure.
Yeah, yeah, I know, I mean, I remember when I started 10 years ago, I was laid off of Wells Fargo and kind of parlayed my unemployment and severance with building my pipeline as fast as I could.
Well, and it's so hard
It's
because
hard,
like
yeah.
I'm not, I'm not really doing anything else right now. So it's just like, I wish I could get back into making money and like helping, my boyfriend's pretty much picking up all the slack right now.
Okay, yeah.
And so like, I'm lucky I have that, but I'm just like, it's like so tough when you start out.
Oh, yeah.
So tough. Like you need to have so much money set aside
Yeah.
because people think that I'm going to go to school, I'm going to get my license, and then boom, I'm going to start getting deals. That is literally so far from the truth.
Yeah.
You don't know how hard you have to work in your first year to like get that.
Yep.
And I think that there's like a misconception about it, like a lot of people don't think
Yeah.
that.
I got lucky where, well, I mean, I worked hard. I cut my teeth renting out places for like $400 a pop. I would do rentals, which was
Okay.
about as hard as showing a buyer a house and making 10 times that.
Yeah.
But I would do that for my former broker and property manager to keep the money flowing.
Anything you can do
Yeah, it was
for
building
money.
a pipeline.
All right, guys, if you can turn your cameras on, Chase is joining us today. And so if you can kind of do the same thing we did before, introduce yourself, where you live, and where you're at in the process of real estate, and we'll go from there.
That would be great.
Great, let's start with you, Jennifer.
Hi, I live down in Waterville, so it's about 45 minutes down to 35.
Okay.
I am just in class right now, so I am literally just starting out, and that's about where I am.
Congrats. How about Michael?
Yeah, hey there. I'm Michael Schenk. I have been Licensed now since September, and I live in Belle Plaine, Minnesota. Just starting out.
Down south too. I drive south to, I'm from Iowa originally, so I go down 35 or 169 if I want to go through St. Peter to the co-op there. So I'm kind of familiar with your guys' territory. Candace.
Hi there. Can you still hear me? Yeah, you can. Okay.
Yep.
I'm in training. It's been a slow process for me, but I want to stay plugged in and I know I'll get there. And I live in Egan.
Live in Egan, and you're a licensed agent right now?
No, I'm just in training. I meant like learning, like learning. So
That's fair.
I was.
You'll get there. Thank you, Candace. Kylie?
Hi, I'm Kylie. I just got licensed last month. And went, straight to Keller Williams. I'm excited to be here. It's a great team of people so far that I've noticed. I live in Burnsville, and I want to point out that I did just have a baby, so that's why I'm not there. But so if I get up and walk away, it's because of that. But I'm here, I'm listening, and I'm excited for this one. So it's nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you too. I am having, hopefully we'll have our second baby in February, and we're trying to plan around that, and I might have to stay.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. Good luck. Is that your first baby?
No, third, but
Oh, okay. You got it down.
She's a whiner though, so that's why I'm gonna stay muted as well.
Good sleeper or not so good a sleeper?
Not good.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we have 2 boys and a girl, and she's very much a girl, so we like to joke about that.
Good luck. That's a tough trick. But you are licensed, so you got through that. Okay.
Yes.
Building your pipeline right now.
Yep, working on it. So.
And raising kids. That's tough.
Yeah.
All right. Good luck.
Thank you.
Elijah.
Yep, my name is Eli. I am currently living in Farmington, and I just had my onboarding meeting on Wednesday, so I need all the knowledge and experience I can get, basically.
All right. So you are licensed and you're onboarded?
He's onboarded, so his license will come next week.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. And Israel. I feel like I've met Israel.
Hello, everybody. Hi, my name is Israel Perez. I am being licensed since May of this year. I already sold my first house. I'm waiting for my closing on the second house. I still learning, and I need to learn a lot more. I would love to put more time into this. It's a great experience career, but things in life is not allowing me to do my 110%. But I want to learn, and I love when Jessica just push me and gives me a hard time about it.
Congrats on doing your first deal. That's huge. Doing deals is learning. Where do you live at?
I live in South St. Paul.
Okay, awesome. Good to know. You'll be the South St. Paul expert in no time.
I will hope so.
All right. Let's go to the room.
I'm Grace. I have had my license since August, and I told you that after that.
Okay, awesome.
I'm like Jonah, and I don't have my license yet. I'm just starting.
Okay, awesome. All right, well, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I'm Chase Lenz. I've been in the business since 2012. Like I was telling Grace, I started with a smaller brokerage called SP Real Estate. Now it's called Verde Real Estate. I started with them because I've always wanted to be in the investment side of real estate. So they had a property management company, and the broker there did a lot of flips. And so then I was able to help him do some flips. He would actually let me help him buy the property. He would renovate it and then I'd list it. That was just a small portion of my business, but I got experience helping investors buy and sell 1 units all the way up to like quads. A lot of stuff in the uptown South Minneapolis area, but I've helped investors all over, with townhomes in Apple Valley, Farmington, Hopkins, Blaine. So still, I just wanted to say that because I feel like as far as agents in the office go, I have a little bit more experience there, so I'm happy to answer questions in the future about that. We're here to talk about negotiations. But yeah, I'm an investor too, so I have a rental duplex in Farmington, and have flipped a few houses myself. Most of my business though is, I would say 80% is just traditional buying and selling. And I've been lucky enough I kind of built my business through Sphere, and have kept up with them through database and things like that. And I'm able to do most of my business from past clients and Sphere and repeat buyers, which is really nice if you get, sometimes it happens 2 to 3 years in the business that you have people move up and then, one client equals 2 transactions because you're doing a sell and a buy for them. So that's my story. I've been with Keller now for 2 years, and I came over here because I saw the value in them teaching you how to build your business as a business, and because I feel like they could get me to the next level. So I'm actually wanting to start a team, and I'm interviewing right now an assistant, to add an assistant, and then hope to add some team members in the future if all works out well. So let's talk about negotiations. I'd like to be very interactive. It's just going to be more of you guys can ask me questions and I'll hopefully give you the right direction. And if I'm wrong, Jess will probably tell me. Yeah, why don't we open it up to questions to start? What's pressing question you have about negotiations?
I have a question. How do you, I can't see you. There you are.
Okay.
Sorry, I just want to look at you too, like you want to look at me. So,
Okay.
when you're doing negotiations and things are not going well, and how do you hide that you're disappointed or frustrated? How do you keep like the poker face, and you keep things just smooth? How do you do that?
That's a good question. I think the nice part is you're not necessarily face to face with the other agent or these people. So if you're emailing or texting, then it's pretty easy there. But I do encourage you to call the other agents and talk it out with them, because you want to find out as much as you can about the sellers, most likely if your buyer's agent's the seller's motivation and whatnot. I think, a lot of big agents say this, you just really have to stay unemotional, and with the transaction. I know as younger agents, especially, like, you might get emotional because you care about the client and whatnot, but it's also the whole, like, you guys need money, and so you want this deal to be done. So you really, that's my mindset, is just stay unemotional. Try to always think in the best interest of your clients. And literally, like, I'll tell my clients, and it helps me stay unemotional, like, just pick the price where you're comfortable getting this deal and afterward you'll be happy, and let's just go with that. I'm not going to push them higher and higher and higher. And that tends to help me also say, like, look, this is the highest price we're willing to go, take it or leave it type of a deal. But yeah, sometimes you're just dealing with a tough agent, and I guess I I talk it out with other agents sometimes and that helps me because I'm a person that talks it out. So like if I'm getting emotional in a deal and thinking something's not going right, then maybe I'll turn to another agent, or you could turn to Jess or whatnot, talk it out a little bit, see, clear your head, make sure you feel like your point is correct, and then proceed from there. Sometimes I talk it out with my wife too.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate your honesty. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Have we talked about, big things in negotiation, price, terms, and motivation? I think one thing that becomes pretty evident quickly, but if you haven't done deals, are like we talked about, get pre-approvals before you're going to submit an offer, and then if going an extra step would be maybe having the lender call the selling agent to tell them they're highly qualified when you submit the offer. Are you guys familiar with that? No? Okay. So yeah, this would be a big thing to start. So you're representing a buyer and you're about to write an offer. If you're going to write an offer, you have to have a pre-approval, right? And so definitely get a pre-approval. Ideally, it's property specific. So for the specific property you're writing on, make sure you call the lender and you know that they're approved to whatever price that you're about to write the offer at. But I think it's really great if you're most of the time you're showing these places at 5 at night, and maybe you're submitting the offer at 6 or 7 or right before the deadline. And if you think about it, these selling agents are then potentially presenting, unfortunately it happens a lot of time at night, right?
Yeah, it does.
Presenting offers to sellers at like 6, 7 at night, and most of the time, if they're going to accept one, they want to know that the financing is good for the buyer. Well, they're probably going to have a hard time getting a hold of some of those lenders, like if you're in multiple offers at night. But if your lender has already called and said, these guys are awesome, I've reviewed their credit, I have all their assets and information and documentation and everything, and they can tell that this lender, has been in the business and knows what they're doing, I think that gives you a competitive advantage for sure, to get your offer accepted if the terms are similar. Or maybe it's where you get the call back and you're like, hey, the selling agent's like, hey, I love your lender, I love you guys, but you guys are 2,000 less. If you guys bring your price up to $2,000, then we'll go with you because I can't get a hold of this other lender right now. So that would be tip number one. Work with a really solid lender that gives good customer service and will close on time, but will also go the extra mile sometimes and be willing to call selling agents and whatnot. In relation to that, at the end of my offers, if sometimes your clients are like, you're in a multiple offer situation and you're like, probably need to go 15 grand over list to get it here with these other terms, and they're like, okay, and you're like, maybe that'll get it, maybe it won't. Maybe say to your client, can I ask the selling agent, like, hey, if there's a close offer, we might be willing to go up. Like, ask your client first. If there's a close offer, do you think you'll be willing to go up a little bit more, a few grand or whatnot? If they will, then I would say at the end of our offer, like, hey,
Yes.
I would say, hey, if we're close, let me know, if there's anything else we can do to push our offer to the top of the pile type of deal. You don't want to give up anything for your clients if they're not willing, or mislead a selling agent if you don't know that if that's your client's highest and best. But sometimes it's hard, and you can maybe, I've gotten deals that way, where if you present yourself as a professional, you call them, you talk them through it, you tell them how you're educated your client on the house and a few of the defects with it, and you don't have to worry about an inspection or getting nickel and dimed on an inspection. Selling agents want to hear all that stuff because they want the transaction to go smooth, not only for them, but for their clients. So those are things that are, I would say kind of negotiation things, but it's more, it gives you the leg up to get your offer accepted, because I would really think in the shoes of, not only the seller, like what does the seller want, but how can I impress the selling agent to want to work with me over another agent? Because believe me, there are plenty of buyer's agents that big selling agents will not be impressed with, between their offer and everything else and how they talk to them, and their offer can go to the bottom of the pile pretty quickly. Is that bad to say, Jess? Or that's not just, that's for real. So that is a few things that I would say, but other questions, do you have questions on when writing an offer, negotiating pieces of the process and negotiation? One person has had a deal. Have you had a deal yet?
No. I've done a lot of like open houses and like talked to a lot of people, and I have one lead, but no like negotiations.
Okay. Okay, let's talk about, this is another piece, not, which is part of the deal. So, the inspection contingency, you guys are familiar with inspection contingency, and that there can be some negotiations within that? Do you have any questions around that?
I'd say just start from zero.
Okay.
Because it's really so, so much experience based and specific to each
Deal.
property, but like we talked about like the health and safety things, or like when a client says, oh, I want you to, I want him to change his carpet, like.
Right, yeah.
It's not happening.
Yeah, that's good. So, okay, so in a lot of deals, to protect your client, you're gonna write in there that we agree on price, terms, closing date, but we want an inspection contingency in there of 7 to 10 days is the typical period that you'll write in. And so the nice part is the offer gets accepted and your client can get their earnest money back, right? If they want to cancel the deal within those 7 days, if your inspection contingency is 7, let's call it, they can renegotiate price based on the findings of the inspection contingency, or they can ask for repairs from the seller based on the inspection contingency. So like Jess was saying, you want to educate your client ahead of time, especially in this market that's competitive. I mean, you can negotiate anything, but the general concept is that you only call for safety, structural, or big items to be either repaired or ask for a price adjustment for. So like she said, like when you're walking through the house, anything that's obvious, like there's stains in the carpet, there's potentially even holes in the drywall, like cosmetic stuff, you're not going to ask for that on inspection contingency. It's more for bigger things where the inspector comes in, they walk through the house and he tells you the big things that are wrong. And then they decide, okay, we didn't know these things when we first wrote this offer. So now we'd like these things to be fixed because we don't have the money to do it, or just because we think we paid too much or whatnot. So that's things like maybe plumbing, foundation issues, safety issues, structural issues, electric issues. So I would encourage this, and I know that this is a lot of, for time wise, when you're doing a lot of transactions, people say not to go to inspections. I guess I'd be interested in your opinion, Jess, but I think to start, you should go to all your inspections, make sure you have a really good inspector. It's a time when you can learn so much more about a house, which, you know, that's the main thing you're selling. So you want to be able to be an expert in it. So then, you know, you don't want to necessarily put your inspector hat on when you're walking through these houses, but it's big at value to be able to tell your clients like, hey, you know, it looks like the grading is sloping toward the house. That could potentially be water. You know, that's something an inspector might point out. Or, you know, this with the electric, like the GFCIs need to be in the kitchen, and an inspector might point that out or whatnot. You'll learn, you know, if there's cracks in walls, that can mean structural issues. But, you know, cracks in the foundation, my inspector always says, like, if they're going like this, then that could be bad. If they're like jutting out like this, but just mortar cracks aren't that bad. Again, it's not, you don't want to alarm them. You just want to point these things out and say, hey, this might be something an inspector would call out. Or if you know, for sure, like water damage in the ceiling, you know, that maybe you ask, you're just like, we should ask the seller about that. And so you might be able to point enough of these things out that are real that they're just like, okay, yeah, we want to pass on this house, versus making them get an offer accepted, get an inspection, and have them drop out anyhow and wasting money on $400 but of an inspection. But it'll also help you too, I really believe that if you're doing the best for your client and protecting them, I need to see, I'm not a tradesman, but as you get more experience, you'll see the same type of repairs again. But sometimes you need to see the repair on site that needs to be done and ask the inspector questions about it to be able to write up a inspection amendment saying like, this is what's wrong and we need a licensed contractor to fix this specifically. Because if you're not specific with your asks, the seller is most likely gonna take the easiest, cheapest route, and if you don't ask for a professional to do it, how are you gonna know if it's done right? So I would just make sure you're thinking about that when negotiating inspections. The easiest thing is to just say, we're asking for money off and then repair it after, but a lot of times that can't happen because the buyer wants it done then, or they don't have enough money or whatnot. So then you need to make sure that you're being very specific. And a lot of times, if it's plumbing or electric, you'll say hire a licensed plumber or electric, because then if they're licensed that they're going to do it right, versus allowing the seller to wire in some outlets or having a handyman do some plumbing or something.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't usually go to inspections, like in the beginning I did, and I don't now. However, I do have one client that went on an inspection on her own, and there was no way I could be there. And I got a text from the inspector, Tom, saying she is not ready to buy a house. I was like, ugh, I know that, right? And she just had to go through that whole experience. And so yesterday I was there and we went through everything. And she, it was at times lighthearted, right? But I would say, this is amazing, right? Like everything's been replaced, and oh, well, but this and this and this, and so I really focused on health and safety, talked her out of a couple things, and then she came back to, well, I really want them to fix the screens. And I'm like, okay, it's not that big a deal, right? Like, I can ask, however, they don't have to say yes, and they don't have to say yes to anything, right? So we want to make it like as small of a list as possible. And Murphy's Law, the inspection contingency needs to be done tomorrow at midnight or 11:59. And the only thing that needs to be tested is the air conditioning. And it's not going to be warm enough to test it until Sunday. because at 65 or lower, he said maybe 60, you shouldn't turn it on, right? And I'm like, oh my gosh, so, and then she's like, well, I'm gonna want that replaced. I'm like, well, if it works, we can't ask them to replace it, right? She's like, well, but I don't wanna mess around with that. And I'm like, we're gonna have to get an extension to make sure that we can check for it, which is totally normal. And I can't guarantee you that they are going to have to replace it, right? Like, that's not how this world rolls, right? So she's like, well, I would just be happier if that's the way it went. And I'm like, I know, I totally get it, right? But there's that's where it's your job. And like Candy, when you were asking about like, poker face, that's also your job, is to keep your client in line and in check. Because if you go along with their emotion, then they're not gonna calm down, right? And then it just starts to escalate and you're like, oh my God, what is going on? And it's like, so instead of being like, I know, right? Like, we totally should get this air conditioned, like, you just go, you know what? I'm gonna do what I can, and I'm not gonna guarantee that's happening, right?
Yeah.
So it's always super important to know your client and know, like when Colin was talking about the disc, and so she is, what is she? She's probably the C or the S, right? Like, she wants stuff like, this is it. Well, they damaged the door, I shouldn't have to replace that, right? I'm like, so just know your client, and if you feel like, ooh, I probably should be there, or this could blow up, then go there, right? Our broker would say, go, but don't ever say anything or do anything that could possibly have the client come back to you and say, but you told me this at the inspection. Right? You let the inspector bring all that stuff up, and because otherwise you can get in a worse predicament of too much.
But I would say, I mean, that's definitely another reason to be there. Unfortunately, they're definitely good inspectors, but sometimes these guys are, come from the trades, and so they're not as good at explaining in layman's terms. And so you really need to go, I mean, that's half this business, is like being a counselor for grown humans, because they go crazy when they're making the biggest investment purchase of their life. So like, that's what you're signing up for. If you don't want to do that, then I'd probably get out now, honestly.
Run.
That's why you make the big bucks. Because they freak out, of course, at like 7, 8, 9 at night normally. But yeah, so I just always take it as, you're looking out for the best interest of your clients. Like, what would I want to know here? Or when the inspector's saying something that I can tell is probably bringing them, but they don't really know the ramifications, and then I just try to ask more questions like, okay, so what does this mean? What are the ramifications of this siding, or the window, like one thing that you'll run across are windows where their seals are broken. And it's really more of a cosmetic thing because it looks cloudy and you can't wipe the dew off the windows. But seals broken can mean like those windows are leaking air in the winter and they need to be replaced. Well, no, they're really not leaking hardly any air, and it's just cosmetic. So that's just, I'm trying to give an example, but yeah, there's been many times where that's why I go there, is to really flush out like what the issues are going to be. And I tell them before, your job, like, there's going to be a bunch of little things, right, that they call. That's their job to do, is to find all the little things. Your job is to figure out what you're comfortable with, taking on, or, just living with, that this house has, what you're comfortable with, like, taking on and repairing, and then what you're really like, okay, that's kind of a deal breaker for me. We might want to have the sellers fix that or give us money for that.
Well, you're not allowed to be at the actual inspection while he's doing that. You're only allowed to be there for the walkthrough, right?
No, you can, I mean, I prefer you can be there while he's doing that. There are some inspectors that do it that way. I've always preferred to have inspectors where they do their inspection first and then we come to the walkthrough, but some inspectors work where literally they show up at the house, the client shows up at the house, and then they walk walk it together, but yeah,
Tom prefers that they come at the very end, like the last,
Yeah.
so like he did 1 o'clock yesterday, and we came at 4:30.
Yep.
He had the report done, we went through the report at the table, and then he walked us around and showed us, you know, like the red or orange or yellow.
Interesting. So
Yeah.
I went to a couple home inspections with like friends who were buying houses before I got licensed, and one of the inspectors was like really strict, like you cannot be here. Like absolutely, you cannot be here while I'm doing my inspection, like don't get in my way, I need to do this. And then he just had like a notebook at the end. I went with her because her agent like didn't show up, so it was just her and she had no idea. So I was like, I'll go with you as a friend, like I have nothing to do.
Yeah.
And we were just kind of like walking through and he was having to like explain everything to us, but it seemed like he was annoyed that he had to explain everything to us. He had like a little notebook, like, okay, well, this is what's wrong here, this is what's wrong here, but he didn't have a report drawn up. That came like 2 days after. It was a pretty long time after.
Yeah, I mean, it can take, should hopefully only take a day, but I was gonna say, this is more of my personal opinion, but in my experience, I do like, I don't think that's a bad thing, because I feel like if they just show up and start walking, they could potentially miss stuff because you're asking questions and
Yeah.
everything. So I would
Which makes sense,
Yeah,
right?
I would
Like you want them to
prefer-
be focused, really vigorous. I mean, how long does an inspection take usually? Is it like 3-4 hours? Depending on the
So
house.
like it takes them normally 2-ish, 2 to 3 to do their thing, and then, you know, the extra hour for the walkthrough.
Okay.
But I found a lot of times that they'll do their thing for 2 or 3 hours, and then when we do the walkthrough, which is kind of like their double check, I mean, it shouldn't necessarily be their double check, but they'll find something else. Like I would say half, and it's normally small, but they'll see, oh, I didn't see that, you know, there's also this, and then they'll take a picture or whatnot. So I think it's good to do it that way, just so they're able to be the most thorough and whatnot as well.
Makes sense. So you really just have to ask.
Yeah,
How
yep,
do
you just
feel
ask
about me
them.
being here? Like, I'm a new agent. I'd love to, you know, learn. Can I walk through with you? And then
Yeah.
if they're like, yeah, sure. Like, nope, sorry.
Yeah, and just so you know, when I said show up to the inspection, I was more saying show up to the results with the
Okay.
client. Because of everything you said, and you'll still, you know, you'll learn just as much there because they're seeing all the defects. But it is nice when an inspector, like, so when, and I don't know if you'd say this to an inspector, but when a house is really nice and perfect, then you walk in and he's walking you through and there's like, everything's good here. And so the client starts feeling like, well, what am I paying this guy for? Because like everything's good. So it's nice when inspectors will also say, and if you can find one that will be like, I looked at this, I looked at that, it's all good. Because some inspectors will just not really tell them what they did. And then it's like, you got a good report, see you. And they're like, what they do. Yeah. So yeah, I use Tom. I think he's pretty good. He's good at talking to people. I used to have
What's the website you showed us?
Yep, it's, yep.
Ranch Investigators or something.
And
Okay.
the really cool thing is that he has on the top right, there's like an option to choose what you want from the inspection to put in your amendment. Oh, right, which is so nice, like the wording is already done.
Oh, nice.
You
Okay.
can just, you know, cut and paste whatever you want. And you know that we always talk about giving more than one person, right? So I will say to people, I have like 3 inspectors that I like to work with. Do you want me to see, you know, like who's got availability? Because sometimes if you're like, well, we want to be really competitive, we want to go a short time for the inspection contingency.
Okay. Yep.
But you also could be shooting yourself in the foot, because if they don't ever have any openings, then you're like, well, we can't actually do that. So
Yeah. So it's better to check before.
I do.
Oh,
Like I'll go online and just check their availability. You still have to type in some stuff, but it will give you the time, and then I'll say, okay, let's reserve it, and then make sure if you're reserving it before the offer is accepted. Her name's Elisa, but you tell her, say, we do not have this accepted yet, so don't ask for the request through showing time. Because if they do, they're like, we don't even have a signed offer here, right? But sometimes I'll even tell the agent, like for this case, I said, I'm putting in a request for inspection, even though it's before we've gotten an accepted offer, because I want to make sure that I have it held.
Oh, okay.
Well, and you want to know, like, if you're trying to be competitive, so she means shorten up your inspection contingency. If you shorten it up to 3 days, you gotta know that he's gonna be able
That
to get in
seems
there.
like, oh my, sounds like nerve wracking.
I've definitely done
3
it.
days?
So, yeah, I mean, in this market, well, this summer,
Yeah.
a lot of people are doing no inspection.
Well, yeah,
contingency,
like
which
they're just
is-
waving, like even having such a sh-
Yeah.
it's just-
But I would say, is it Elisa?
Mhm.
Yeah, that's what I really like about Tom's setup. There's not a lot of inspectors that have a really good assistant admin type person. And so I was calling her a lot this summer and saying, what do you got available? And she'd get back to me, you know, or text me at bunches of different times, you know, at 6 at night or whatever, because that's when I'm writing an offer. So definitely leverage her. She's really good and Tom's really good. If you can get him.
Yeah, he's one of our preferred vendors, so his stuff is on the back of all of our calendars. And then he's got stuff in that, back, little cubbies, and there's a coupon, you can get $50 off your first, inspection for your client. I tried using it multiple times, it only works once.
Yeah.
They're like, that's a one-time thing, I'm like, oh, I didn't know.
Oh,
Yeah.
whoops.
So
You're like, I'm not Jessica, my name is Allison.
Right, I'm a different agent.
I am a different agent, I'd like to use this coupon.
Yeah. I can call for you. Just a thought, related to that. So it would definitely be good. I don't know when you do it in your buyer process, Jess, but to explain to them before inspection their options. So you guys may know this, but it's not only just like a house inspection, but addition would be a radon test. And then a big thing that a lot of agents never did, and finally I think is more mainstream, but sewer inspections. And these all cost different. So is anybody familiar with the sewer inspection?
I've heard of it, but I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
So sewer inspection, I use Drain Busters. They say that every house could potentially have sewer issues, but a lot of the times the sewer issues are in Minneapolis or in the older places where there's like old pipes that are clay tile. I think they call them cast iron, and they can literally collapse, or like tree roots. So if there's ever a tree in the front yard, that's a big one. Always think these tree roots could be growing into the sewer pipe. I should say you might want to get a sewer inspection for this one. I mean, you always probably want to prep them and just say, here's your options. You can do, you should do the house inspection. You can do a radon test if you're worried about radon. Sewer, you know, you can do a sewer inspection if it's a newer house. You know, maybe you go as far as saying like, it's less likely here. You know, if you want to be 100% confident, I would still recommend it. But I would definitely, if you're working in Minneapolis or anything, I don't know, 1960s or less, recommend a sewer inspection. It's $175 to $200. They stick a camera down the main drain, and then they can see if there's any roots or holes or anything like that.
Is that provided through like a regular home inspection, or do you have to do a different company?
Right, yeah, so it depends. Some regular home inspectors, most of them don't actually do it, but they'll schedule it in conjunction.
Okay.
So you don't have to worry about it. You just say, I want a sewer inspection, and I think Tom has it now, and then they'll organize it. But other inspectors, you have to, then you're coordinating that. So you're coordinating. Most inspectors do the regular home inspection, and then they'll have a radon machine to do radon test. And so you guys know the radon test is normally a 48-hour test. So like the best way is they'll set like say your home inspection's on Wednesday, they'll set the test on Monday. They'll go there and put it down, and then Wednesday at the inspection they'll pick it back up and they'll have the results from the radon test as well as your home inspection.
I heard you can also buy a radon test yourself at Home Depot.
Yes, so
if you want.
Well, so the thing with that is you can buy them at Home Depot and they're cheaper, but they're normally like 3 to 6 month tests. So during the inspection period, you can't really get those results.
Interesting. Okay, I thought I saw something. If it's like a 48-hour, you put it right in your basement, keep the door shut, you have results in 2 days.
Maybe.
Kind of the same thing.
Maybe, I have never seen it, but maybe,
I'll look that
yeah,
up.
maybe you're right.
I'm gonna Google that.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, it would have to be like a machine that probably costs a little bit, but maybe you're.
Yeah,
I
I would
haven't
think that
seen
it would be expensive.
Yeah, but to your point, I've been told because radon levels and it, are different, like daily and with different weather patterns and seasonally. These are the best tests we can do for an inspection contingency period, a 48-hour test. But I would also tell your buyers, like, especially if the radon level comes in close, so like 0.4 ppc or something is the action level where you would have to install a radon mitigation system if you want to be safe, or you ask the seller to install a radon mitigation system. If it comes in at like 3 or 3.5, you're not going to ask the seller to do anything, but you should probably tell your client, go to Home Depot or whatnot, get a longer term test, and that'll tell you if this was just a really high occurrence once, or if maybe over the long run, they do need a real radon system because the levels are, higher. Because a 2-day sample just doesn't normally cut it per se.
What would cause you to want to, like, let's say you're just like at a home, what would be a reason somebody would want a radon test? Is it common with pretty much every home inspection, or is there a specific year of the house, location of the house that's like really causes you to suggest to your client you need a radon test?
Good question. Well, so one, you could always, a lot of radon mitigation pipes are on the outside of houses, so you can kind of see this pipe sticking out of some of the houses in the neighborhood, but not necessarily. But yeah, I've been told it literally, like there are some geographic areas, like I think there's some in St. Paul where it's mapped out that there is higher level of radon, but literally it can be house to house, I've been told.
Oh, okay.
Like
It really doesn't
not even
even
block
matter.
to block. Yeah, it could be house to house. So it's pretty common, like just you get a home inspection, you get a radon test if you're, unless, you have some people that it's literally an odorless gas that comes out of the ground that I think there's been pretty good information that it causes cancer, but some people just don't believe it, and so then they don't get the test. And it also, since it comes from the ground, if you're gonna be like living in the basement, then I would even more encourage it, because normally the concentrations in the basement will be less than the main level, just because it dissipates as it comes up.
Not all houses have the radon mitigation systems.
No, so they started building them into houses, I think maybe 10 years ago, it started to be code.
Okay.
But what they do is they stick, I mean, it's literally just a pipe in the ground that allows the air to come up through the pipe and out the top of the house, so it doesn't go into the house. But with that, just know if there's a pipe, it doesn't, a lot of times if there is high radon, there needs to be a fan on the top that's sucking it out. So just another thing to know, just because there's radon pipe, you need to ask if there's an active fan. So they call it passive if there's just a pipe, and if there's a fan sucking out the top, then it's active.
Oh, okay.
And that's also on the seller's disclosure. You can understand if it has something like that, because there's a spot on the seller's disclosure to say, have they ever tested for radon? They need to say if they have, and is there a radon mitigation system that's been installed? And so then you can know pretty quickly if you can't spot it in the house.
How much is it about to make it active? It's just the fan, right?
Yeah, I think it's like 300. It depends. The big thing is the fan is like a few $100, but is there an electric outlet up there to plug the fan?
Yeah, because if they didn't do that, then you're like, oh, now we have to get that done.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and I mean, in general is like 1,500 to $2,000 to put a system in, but you want to be careful quoting that too, because I've had some where like in older homes, it's really hard to get out, and so then it can cost more.
There was a guy that I was referred to by the listing agent, and my client didn't end up using him, but he does a flat fee of $1,500 no matter what, because he said he feels like, he can make it up with an easier one, and he's like, it just it sets people's mind at ease. And I was like, wow.
Yeah.
And then of course my client was like, yeah, I didn't like him. He didn't get back to me. I was like, oh, okay, well then never mind. But
Yeah.
I mean, there are people out there that you probably can find to do that. You know,
Yeah.
which is, yeah, especially in an old house, you're like, oh my God.
Yeah.
So
Well,
what if
and
you,
go ahead.
sorry.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
What if you have, okay, you're getting an inspection and you find that there is radon, and so you're like, okay, you need to get a radon mitigation system or whatever. Is that something that you ask the sellers to pay for then? Or is like in negotiations, or is that something that,
So that's why, yeah, you would figure out the results within your inspection contingency, and it would be common that you would ask the sellers to pay for and install it.
okay, and let's say they said no, then you could be like, see ya,
Yep, then you
because
could
you're
just,
in the inspection period, so.
yep,
I
and
guess-
get your earnest money back.
Okay.
And then they have to disclose.
Yeah,
Doesn't mean they do, but
yeah,
they should be disclosing that the radon came back and that they're not gonna fix it.
So what happens if that situation happens and then you and your client walk away and then somebody else puts an offer in, and then you look at their disclosures, they're updated, but they don't put it on there. Ethically, do you as a real estate agent, should you report them? Or should you just leave it?
yeah, no, I
You
don't.
just totally report
yeah.
them and say, why haven't you changed this?
Well, because it's like health and safety, right? It's like somebody's, I mean, and imagine, like, if somebody's like, oh, I don't know, we can't afford to get the radon test, and it's like, well, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just such a bad, ethically thing to do, you know?
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, but even if the sellers don't want to, since the agent knows that it's a material fact, they have to.
Yeah.
They have to
Oh,
put it.
because that would absolutely
Yeah.
affect the buyers.
Agents are required to disclose the material facts. They know whether the seller wants it or not, so.
That's why sometimes when you walk in a house and you're touring it, they're super careful on what they tell you, because they know if they say anything, they know you have to report it.
What
or
if you
disclose
ask
it.
them, do they have to tell you? Let's say they don't disclose,
Yeah.
but if you bring it up, are they legally obligated to tell you? Because you asked them? I wonder,
I mean,
It's hard to prove.
either
yeah, I
way,
suppose.
like whether you ask or not, if they know, they have to legally tell you, but
Yeah,
proving it is another.
Right,
Yeah.
and like the disclosures, like they should be filling that out, like if there was a water leak, you don't cover it up, you say, yes, there was a water leak and we fixed it. We haven't had a problem since,
That's
right?
the classic answer, yep.
Yep,
Make sure that they can actually say that, but yeah.
right,
that'd be
right.
Ideal.
Sometimes that happens in townhomes where, you know, they take care of the outside, but then if there is some sort of leak, like they'll take care of the leak from the outside, but then you're responsible on the inside. So then, I had a client say, you know, like, they wouldn't do anything, and so we had to do this, we had to rip it apart, but we fixed it all, and we have
oh, they do that in
documentation.
condos too. My
Yeah.
mom had a huge water leak in her condo,
Mm-hmm.
and they were like, nope, that's your problem because it's pipes within your building, and she goes, actually, it's not. And she had an inspector come out and she had him follow the pipes all the way through, and she basically said, so you fix my pipes, you pay for it, or I'm suing you, and they had no other choice. So they paid for an entire remodel of all the pipes leading into her unit, all underneath, and an entire new kitchen and all the damage that it caused to her. The association had to pay for it because she was like, well, I'm not stupid, you know?
Well, and they kind of bank on people to be stupid, like they're hoping, like maybe they won't figure it out, right?
Well, that was, yeah.
It's your deal, right?
Yeah.
But you just have to push, right? And
Well,
it's the
yeah.
same thing as when you're listing a place and they're like, oh yeah, everything on the outside is included, right? Well, I'm gonna need proof of that from the HOA disclosures or whatever it is, right? Because that's the worst you're the buyer's agent, you tell your client, yeah, it's covered. And then you get the disclosures, which is why you can back out within 10 days of getting them.
Yep,
Because
okay.
if something comes up and you're like, well, I was told this, but I don't wanna have to replace the roof, right?
I mean, it makes sense.
I did wanna,
Oh, I have a question.
Yeah.
What is like the significance of a well? Because I'll tell you why I'm asking. So my cousin just sold his house a couple months ago in Prior Lake, like on Prior Lake. It was a tear down. So the buyer, they accepted an offer. Everything was all set up. They had closing, and the day before closing, the buyer's agent came in with like a handwritten map. And I don't know where they came up with this map, but it was like 50 years old. And they're showing like, no, there's a well right here. And it was going to hold the whole entire deal up because they never disclosed it in the seller's disclosure because it was not to their knowledge that there was even a well there. So what, I guess my question is like, what, if it's not in the seller's disclosure, why was it such a big deal to the buyer? I don't understand that.
Yeah, well, they may have not known. I mean, it's just, you have to disclose. I guess the big thing is they want, if the well is not working anymore, they want it to be sealed properly. And you have to have it sealed properly with the Department of Health. And so I would assume that that's why. No.
Yeah.
It's like a huge deal to the state, isn't it? Or to the city, depending on.
Yeah, so it's a huge deal to the city and state that it be sealed properly. And so most of the time, it's either pretty easy. Those ones that aren't known about is like, because it was an old well that was sealed properly, and you can just go to the Department of Health and get the certificate that says it was. That's the ideal situation. I don't know what happened there, but if it wasn't sealed yet, then you just have to get it sealed properly. And honestly, it's like $1,000, but I haven't done one. Yeah. But
Well, is it something that like us as like a buyer's agent have to, or we should look into, even though it's not in the seller's disclosure? Is it like that important that we still go and make sure that there's no issues like that surrounding the house we're going to buy?
I mean, if you can somehow, I don't know how you would be expected to know, but if you have enough experience and you know that there may have been a well there before for some reason, then I would, look into it, because that is a thing that classically can get missed. I will say, so the one time I've heard it go really bad is if they try to seal it by themselves without the Department of Health. That's no good. My brother actually had one where the guy just like had somebody come and pour cement into it, and it wasn't done properly.
Oh my God.
And so he literally, the seller had to have somebody come and drill the thing out and then have it done properly. So
Wow.
that's the biggest ramification I can see. I don't know the exact sealing process, but the Department of Health wants it done properly. So just do it properly, get that certificate. And then that certificate goes with the property. So that's the thing is like, if they bought it and there was a well there and it was sealed properly, as it passes change, people might not even know, even though the certificate's there, and it's good, because I still think that you're supposed to say if there was a sealed well, if you know.
Mm-hmm.
And does the county do you think they'd have information on that too, maybe?
Yeah, county or it's Department of Health is still on.
Sure. And cities, I think, do as well.
Yeah, depending
Yeah,
on.
because my question is like, where did this buyer's agent even come up with this old, like handwritten map? It was so bizarre.
Yeah, I would say, city or county maybe, or title company.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at the location map, that's a rough, drawing estimate or whatever by the seller of where stuff is. And I think they're kind of weird, right? Like the person draws the house and then they, and you're like, okay, well, let's make sure the septic's on the opposite side of the house than the well, right? Because that'd be disgusting. And like that's, but people don't know. They don't know.
Yeah.
They're like, I don't even know.
It's got a well and septic.
The sellers are the ones that draw the location map,
Yeah.
not like the title company.
No.
Oh, okay.
No,
So
it's
sellers that have
super,
to do
like,
that.
So it's pretty drawn out.
I mean,
Can you
it
have
feels.
an inspector inspect a well then to make sure that it's good? Like if they do give you their certificate saying, yeah, we had it sealed like 10 years ago or whatever, it's not in use. Could you have your inspector be like, yeah, I want to check that out?
I've never had, if you have that thing from the Department of Health, I always
You
take
just won't
that
even
as
bother.
gold, yeah.
Trust it's good. Okay.
I've never had it, but you can definitely, like, if there's an active well, the classic thing is you have it tested, the water tested.
Okay.
But yeah, I haven't. The other thing is with septics, you have those inspected too, but find that they don't look at the parts and like they look at the septic tank and make sure it's not leaking and whatnot. But if there's like a pump in the house or whatnot, you might want to ask the septic inspector if they look at that, because I found that they don't. And then, it's just, somebody needs to look at the pump and see how old it is and give some information on that. I haven't done a whole lot of septics, but I've probably done like 10 to 12, and it's always, I just feel like the whole thing doesn't get looked at for some reason. Like, you definitely want, if your inspector can look at the one inside the house, I just had Tom do it.
Sure.
And look at like that piece of the pump, and there potentially is an alarm inside the house that if it ever were to back up, that alarm would go off. Well, I've had some where, the septic inspector doesn't really look at that, but the regular inspector looked at that and was like, the alarm is actually not working anymore, so you might want to have that fixed. So, yeah. But a lot of regular inspectors don't look at that either. So there's some piece in that septic inspection that can be missed. The one other thing I wanted to say with inspections that you might not know, so we had radon test potentially, sewer inspection test potentially, the regular home inspection test potentially. If there are fireplaces that are old wood burning, you definitely want to offer to them that they have somebody inspect that. A normal inspector will like inspect the fire box, which is the main thing that you can see. But the big money comes in where the pipe going up to the chimney, if that is damaged or missing mortar joints or whatnot, it can supposedly be a fire hazard, and it can cost thousands of dollars to repair or replace them. So I say that to make sure you guys cover your butts, but I'll also say, I feel like every time I get one of those, they always say that there's a potential danger in there. And so take it with a grain of salt, or use, it's hard because like, if there's any little missing mortar in there, then, potentially fire could get in there and start the rest of the house fire. But all of those have a little bit of missing mortar, so maybe even prep your buyers for that. But never say like you should do it, but just say this is common to see type of deal. And that can be an extra $150, $200 for that. So the inspection tab can get into the thousands pretty quick if you pay for all those. Just good things to warn your clients about, either definitely before inspection or even right away, to be like, hey, depending, especially if you're looking at houses in like Minneapolis or South St. Paul has some older ones, if they have all that kind of stuff, and fireplaces, you might be spending $1,000 to do it right.
I heard it's best to go over all of that, right, like in your buyer presentation, to just like, at least let them know about it once. That way you can refer back and just be like, hey, I just want you to know, heads up, this is a possibility. Like, not saying it's going to happen, but it is a possibility that we could,
Right.
look at this house and there could be 1,000 things wrong with it, and just not work through it or back out because you have that right.
Right.
It's just better to like match their energy, right? What kind of person are they, but also stay calm and just let them know. So that way, when it comes up, it's not the first time they're hearing about it. Like, you never told me that an inspection could be this bad.
Yeah, well, and a lot of I don't want to say a lot, but first-time buyers are working with slim money, and so maybe they've just only heard, an inspection's $300 or $400, but really, when it comes time to it, it's $1,000. So make sure they have the extra money for that, and then down payment, potential closing costs. If you're in a hot market where you can't get seller paid closing costs, I mean, that was this summer. I mean, I hate to say it, but to protect your guys' time, this summer there were times when agents were like, if you can't cover your own closing costs and need seller paid closing costs, it's almost not worth going out in this market, because the offers that are getting accepted are with no seller paid closing costs, basically. And so for a first time home buyer, that can be like, if you're 3% down on 300,000, that's $9,000. Well, closing costs on top of that can be another 7-8 grand an inspection, so you wanna make sure they got 17, 18 plus a cushion, or they weren't really a buyer that was gonna have a shot in this market this summer. What's that?
Yep, the buyers are paying for the inspections.
Yeah, yep, yeah. The only caveat would be, so there's some cities that make the seller get a mini inspection, let's call it, before they can list the property for sale, like a truth in housing inspection is what it's called. And so there are gonna be those cities where you get a truth city inspection report, which is nice for a buyer. But I would still always recommend they get a buyer's inspection
You
on it.
still want to get an inspection no matter what.
Yep.
Or at least recommend.
Yeah, but it's also, again, nice to have a little heads up on the house and what an inspector might call. But also, when you're looking at that, then make sure, hey, buyer, you know about this now, so take this into consideration as we're writing the offer. And so sometimes in some cities on those inspection reports, it may say that for the city, something has to be fixed. I would probably write in the offer that if the seller hasn't already taken care of that, they'll fix it as part of the offer. Now, granted, you can be more competitive if your buyer's willing to take that on, and you're like, hey, we're in multiple offers. Are you comfortable taking that on? And say to them, seller will take on that expense, if we win the day. And there is a lot of little things that you just learn over time. That I'm thinking about, these guys have never seen it. So the areas around here that have those, in case you're listing a house too, you'll want to know this because you need it before you list, are Bloomington, St. Paul, South St. Paul, I think has it.
Where you need to have the inspection, like you said?
Where you have to have the inspection before you list the house.
Okay.
Yep.
How do you find that information out? Where would you go?
City website normally has, if you have to have it, and a list of approved inspectors. Okay. And so it's normally actually independent inspectors that are registered with the city or approved by the city to do these inspections.
Yeah, a lot of times they call them TISH, which is Truth in Housing. And like Richfield, the city does it, but Bloomington and Minneapolis, you have to hire somebody to do it, right? So like I told my clients in Richfield, I'm like, yeah, we'll just call this guy, and then he's like, yeah, Richfield does it. And I was like, oh, I didn't know that, right? So.
And Richfield is tough. They are picky and make you fix stuff.
Yeah.
And there's some cities now too, I think like Golden Valley and maybe Hopkins or Minnetonka, that are requiring sellers to get a sewer inspection before, and if that turns up bad, they make them replace the sewer or fix it. So yeah, just know when you're listing houses in some of these cities, that's something that should probably just be on your checklist. Do I need to get a city inspection report to be able to list this house? Apple Valley doesn't have one, Lakeville doesn't have one, Egan doesn't have one, Savage doesn't, Prior Lake doesn't. It's more like the cities and inner suburbs, I guess, seem to have them more.
I'm trying to think of I'm on South St. Paul website right now, City of South St. Paul. I'm trying to think what would you search for? Like what?
Selling a house or city inspection.
Requirements?
Yeah.
Like inspection, okay, that's what I.
Yeah, maybe it's West St. Paul. One of those two does for sure, maybe, but I think it's both.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
I don't know if you have much time, but do you think you could just go over appraisals for a little bit? I'm just curious. That is something that's provided the lender gets that, right? They're making sure that they give that borrowed money. They can actually borrow that amount. Is that something that the buyers pay for then?
Yeah, so everybody can hear, Grace asked about appraisals. So in the process, you most lenders will not want to order the appraisal until after the inspection contingency is cleared, because it is a buyer paid item. So like
Another gamble.
inspection contingency period clears, the buyer, yeah, that's another, normally has to pay for the appraisal right away. It's around $500. So make sure the buyer has enough money to do inspection items and appraisal and whatnot. Yeah, and the appraisal is ordered by the lender, so you don't have to, like, the lender orders it, lender actually.
Lender handled thing.
Yeah, and actually the lender's not even supposed to talk with the appraiser, so they literally send it through a system, and then the appraisal gets picked up by an appraiser, an independent appraiser. And they're going out and running comps kind of like we run to make sure that the house is worth what it is. And so it can be, so you're gonna wanna, before they even buy it and put in an offer, like you're kind of doing a mini appraisal if we're on the buy side, run comps for them as similar. Well, this is what appraisers are doing. They are wanting to make sure it's within 6 months to a year, has sold, has as much of the same specs as possible. So the big things are bedrooms, bathrooms, square footage, and then look at the inside for updates. And so that's what you're gonna wanna do too. Try not to cross any major highways or roads, and stay in the same school district. You can normally go.
That's what Colin just said
Yeah.
earlier.
Yep, you can normally go a mile radius, but you wanna know what an appraiser is gonna do so that you can try to advise them like, hey, because what's happening this summer is like, is the house gonna appraise? Well, here are the comps, like I can see it come in around this, but appraisers and appraisals are so subjective, you never know what's gonna happen. So you just gotta give them your best opinion, but try to follow the appraiser guidelines, and there are tons of them, but those that I just gave you are the general ones. Make sure you try not to cross big roadways. So yeah, they order it, the appraiser normally gets out there in the next week or two, and then they actually on-site look at the property and whatnot, and then run their appraisal comps, and then send the report back. Sometimes it's a few days after they get out there, sometimes it could be a week.
Is it a requirement when you are getting a loan on a property? It's always a requirement that you have to have an appraisal?
Well, actually, it normally is, but these last few years, I've seen them do appraisal waivers where it's normally if they're putting like 20% or more down on a property,
Then they'll waive it.
then they'll waive it. And I've talked to lenders about it, and they kind of like have their own little internal Zestimate algorithm. And so if you purchase the house at a purchase price that makes sense, to their algorithm and risk requirements versus your 20 or whatever % down, then it can get waived.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Which another good trick up your sleeve is huge. So I had a listing that I was, representing the seller on, and we were getting offers, and one of the offers was 20% down. And I actually asked the lender, hey, can you get an appraisal waiver on this? And they said yes. And so, imagine that you're now accepting an offer up front for your clients, and they don't have to worry about appraisal. So, another thing that you could always ask for, sometimes the lender won't necessarily say, but another good thing on the buy side too, if your lender can say, hey, these guys are 20% down, and plug in the address and get an appraisal waiver, that's huge leverage for you. They might accept your offer even though it's not the highest offer. Your client's got an appraisal waiver on our deal we did. Yeah. But did we know that before, or pretty quick? I don't know if we knew it before we accepted it.
Yeah, and then another agent in PC got one, and she's like, what is this? Is this good or bad or what? I was like, this is the golden ticket. I'm like, this is the best thing ever. It's her first listing, and because we were concerned about it, right? And I was like, oh my God, right? I was like, it's the best thing ever. I'm like, don't get used to this.
Yeah.
So I guess, I don't know, I'll look up like a YouTube video on like more about appraisals.
Yeah, well,
I feel
what,
like that's the most confusing one to me, because
What
I'm
else?
confused. What happens, okay, so what is it? Is it the market value of that home, what that home is worth? Like, that's what I'm confused about. Because they teach you
So-
in school, market value, appraised value, like,
yeah,
I'm just confused.
Well, and then there's assessed value too.
Yeah.
Assessed is taxes, which has nothing to do with anything.
Nothing to do
Like,
with anything.
Because if they don't know that somebody has completely fixed up the house, the taxes don't reflect that, and like, the people say, I don't want the tax people to know that I updated it, because then I gotta pay more,
Then you
right?
go,
so
okay,
you
so-
want your assessed value to be as low as
Right.
possible.
okay, because that's
For
taxes, and that has
taxes.
nothing to do
Right.
with market value, appraised
Right.
value, okay.
And market value is what somebody is willing to pay.
Is willing to pay.
Which appraisal value has nothing to do with market value, because if somebody's willing to walk in and pay cash and $200,000 over, it's not gonna appraise, but they're paying cash, so it doesn't matter. So in order to get an appraisal to come in, what you wanna do as a listing agent is have the comp sitting out, you wanna talk to them, like, if you go over list price, a lot of times they'll say, oh, did you have multiple offers? Right, because then to them it explains why you're higher. But basically what they do is, I mean, it's not like, because sometimes to me it felt like, oh, is it like magic? Like they have this magic machine that's like, oh, it appraises, right? It's like, no, it's a human being, same as underwriting, right?
Yeah.
And they just go in and they're like, yeah, this is why it looks like it appraises or it doesn't. And if it doesn't, they have to have a really long report as to why.
So if they're going in and let's say you're buying the house for $400,000, does the appraiser come in and say, yeah, it's worth $400,000? Is that essentially what he's doing? He's just going in to see that it is worth
Yep.
$400,000.
And sometimes they literally walk in and they're just like, yeah, it looks good. Or they walk in and they look at everything.
Okay.
So you don't know what you're gonna get.
And if it's over, like if, you're gonna buy it for 400,000 and let's say the appraiser comes in, he's like, no, this is appraised for 500,000, you wouldn't wanna tell your sellers that, right? Because isn't that a good thing?
Yeah,
Your
if you're on the
sellers
buy-
will wanna know.
Oh, okay.
It's the
'Cause-
buyers that you don't. Am I saying it backwards?
Well, yeah, I mean, so
Yeah, you don't wanna tell
the
the sellers.
appraisal
Sellers.
is only gonna happen because the buyers pay for it, and so
Yeah.
you don't wanna tell the sellers if it came in high percent, and you
Because
don't have to
it's
either.
essentially a good thing for the
Yeah, it's a
buyers
good
because
thing,
they
yes.
could turn around and move
They have
in.
instant equity.
And then, exactly, instant equity, so it's a good thing, but if it's under, then you have a concern, right? 'Cause then what do you have to do then if it's under?
You have to negotiate.
You have to
Okay,
tell
so
the
you wanna
sellers.
tell the sellers, hey, I'm not paying 400,000.
Right, and they may
bring it
say,
down.
well, because the bank won't pay it, right? And if you
Yeah,
don't have, let's say 100,000, if you don't have 100,000 in cash, you're not getting the house.
Okay.
Because the bank's not gonna pay for it, so then you
Yeah.
say, in order to keep this together, we have to do this, are you willing to do that?
Oh,
And then the
okay.
sellers are like, nope, we'll put it back on the market, or they're like, oh my god, let's be done with it.
But remember, another, negotiate, at that point in the process, the house has probably been locked up for 3 weeks to a month.
Yes.
So the hope is more like these guys that already moved on, hopefully they're probably willing to come down in price, but be reasonable too, a lot of times it's a meet in the middle, like, how about you guys come down $5,000 and we'll put $5,000 extra cash, but it's hard for buyers, because literally you have to bring the money in cash, any discrepancy.
That actually helps.
Yeah, I would say the big thing, appraisals are subjective. There's a lot of different rules, but you can mesh the rules however you want. I'll tell you, I've had appraisals come in low before, and the good news is you can fight it, or you can, basically the lender will come back to you as the buyer's agent and ask you for comps, like if you have any different comps that would support the value that we need versus the comps that the appraiser used. And it,
Like your own personal comps that you did.
yeah,
for the neighborhood,
yep,
okay.
exactly. And so a lot of times it's gonna be very hard because the appraiser can just basically say no, but like, for example, this summer, this was the craziest, worst appraisal I've ever had. I was helping a buyer, we bought a 4-bed, 2-bath in Bloomington at $330, and there were plenty of comps to support $330, but I was like, appraisers are subjective, you never know, like, let's say worst case, hopefully it's $315. The appraisal came in at $300,000. And I was like, it was just crazy to me. I don't have a lot of appraisals coming low. So I looked at, you gotta now get good at reading appraisal. So I looked at the appraisal and I have a 4-bed, 2-bath is what we bought on a quiet street, and they used a 2-bed, 1-bath on Nicollet Avenue, which is a busy street. And I was like, there's so many other good comps. Like, what is going on here? So
Yeah, because in that instance, you would fight it.
oh yeah,
right? You'd
yeah.
say, "This
So
doesn't
well,
make
you
no
would
sense."
always try to fight it, but a lot of times, appraisers are good, and you try to fight it, but it's like, maybe this one works, maybe it doesn't. But this instance was just like I had 3 or 4 other comps that were at 330 or 340. That there's no way this 2-bed, 1-bath on Nicollet should have been used. So we fought it, and it went to Wells Fargo's super duper team that reviews these things, and it took a long time, but they were like, oh my gosh, yeah, we're gonna do a field review. And then this was weird. Normally it's one review and it's yes or no, it's coming up. With Wells Fargo as a field review, and then it came up to from 300 to 325, and then somehow from there it was just like, we're just doing a new appraisal, and it came in at 330. And so yeah, it was awful.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So it went
up to the value.
30,000.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and so that's just to tell you that, well, and I've had the other crazy one I've had was literally, this was kind of a tougher one. There were comps out there in Apple Valley that said 300, there were comps that said 260, so I had one that came in at like 260 and our purchase price was 300 in Apple Valley, and the appraiser wouldn't budge on it. And so this isn't ideal, but since it was a conventional deal, we were like, fine, we're canceling the deal with you and we're going to a different lender. And with FHA, you can't do this because FHA appraisals stick with the property, but with conventional, you can get a different appraisal. So literally we went to a different lender, they got a different appraisal, came in at 300,000, 40 grand difference. So that's just to show you how subjective appraisals can be. And there are things that you can do to try to combat it. If in that case, the seller had to be flexible, I think we probably had to push the closing date out a little bit more. So you have to think about all those logistics, but there are things you can do to combat appraisals too. But hopefully you write the offer and get it accepted at a decent price where it's pretty much a no-brainer that the appraisals can come in. And I do believe that appraiser's job in their mind is to support the value if the comps are out there. So they're trying to support the value if the comps are out there, but.
Yeah, because if it doesn't, that report is like, it's very detailed. And, sometimes they're like, oh my God, I don't want to write this report. But guess what? You're like $20,000 off, right? So that's why it's our job as a listing agent to really do a good job of pricing it. Because if you don't, if the client is like, I want to sell it for 200, and you're like, my comps are 150, right? That's where you say, that's great, but it's not going to price.
Well, and unfortunately, you're also having a conversation of you price it at 150 and somebody bids 190 on it, but you're reviewing offers with them and saying, I don't know if this is going to appraise, so unless they have something in there saying they'll pay the difference, you might be back at square one after the appraisal anyhow. I ended up on law.
Interesting.
Well, thank you so much, Chase.
Good information.
Thanks, guys. Yeah. Feel free to reach out. This is an awesome market center and a collaborative one versus other places. So I'm happy to help you guys if you have questions.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're
You're
rolling
welcome.
to Tammy. And Taylor's gonna come in and, thanks, Chase.
Yep.
Thank you.
See you guys.
Nice meeting you.
Too.
Been going, so I'm gonna,
Drop something.
you guys get to run to the bathroom.
Your name
and do
again?
that.
Tammy. Thank you.
Right.
Tammy.
I'll do this. I feel like it's from. Okay, yay, you're here. I just pulled that up.
I saw him walk by, so.
They're all on Zoom. So if we can do like the presentation mode, but then have the Zoom people on the side, so she can still see them. Because we told them they have to have their cameras on. Yes.
Stick to the script, lady.
Stick to the script. Let's hear these are for you. You're the next one on the list.
Did I sign this? These
Yeah.
different ones.
Oh, there's lots.
Oh, no. Okay.
So I will give you a quick rundown of everybody so that we don't spend time doing it. So we have Israel and Mike on Zoom. They are both licensed. And Jennifer's in school. Elijah is getting, his license should be coming back next week. Candy's in school. Kylie is licensed. And Grace is licensed, and Marjona is in school, and they're both behind me.
Okay.
So, there you go.
I know Israel's done some
Israel's the only one.
work. Okay.
Yep.
So this,
So just push back and forward.
Okay.
Thank you, Tammy.
And then how do they see me? Oh,
Yep, so you can face that way.
Do you want me to change it?
Because,
We can do that.
well, because then you can see them.
Okay.
And you can see what's going on here, and then we
feel
just
like
kind of
I'm
have,
so-
you're okay. I know, we've had people, Colin and Chase kind of stood like this. So you can see this and you can see that. And
oh, but I still have to stand this way. Hey, everybody. Hi. Okay, we're rolling, we're live.
Yeah.
Okay, we had a half hour. I got a lot of information to throw at you guys. Not really throw, but I'm just gonna walk you through every step of the transaction. By the way, I'm Tammy Giswold, and I'm the transaction coordinator here in the office. So let's just run right into it. So normally I would like to do question and answer or a little bit of class participation, but again, we're really kind of stuck on time. So what to do, now I've got my accepted offer, whether you're listing a home or we're gonna kind of really run through a scenario of purchasing a home. But a lot of focus is on how we get our leads, how we doing CMAs and things like that. But I remember my first year in real estate when I got into this, and all of a sudden I had a deal and I'm like, I have no idea what to do next. So we're gonna help you with that. So the moment that you have an executed purchase agreement that is signed by your buyer, we're gonna go over buyer scenario, signed by your buyer, and the seller, and it's been delivered, is when you need to do these next steps. So the first thing I say is to review your document carefully. You want to make sure that you're the one who wrote the offer. But if you didn't, if you're on the seller side, you want to make sure that all the lines are filled in. They're not. You want to ask that buyer's agent, hey, I noticed that you left this line blank. Can you correct that to me and resend it? So it saves you a lot of time in the end, because then when it gets to Melissa and it's a couple days before you wanna close and get your paycheck and you find that there are errors on that, we have to go back and redo things. So carefully review documents. And then if you are on the sell side, I guess I did do this both. So if you're on the sell side, you need to create a new seller's net proceeds. So the estimate of net proceeds. Why? You're doing it twice. Once on when you're listing the home, you're giving them 3 options of price points. And then again, when you have accepted an offer, you're going to use that price point of that offer.
Are there YouTube videos on how to do one of those on the YouTube channel?
On the net sheet?
Yes, there is, okay.
yeah, Colin did a really good one. I think it's only like 11 minutes long. But
I'll have to watch that.
you did one too, right?
Yeah.
Or you didn't, okay.
No, I knew he had just had it.
Perfect.
I remember you explained something like that on Tuesday, but I was always confused.
Right, yeah.
So I'll have to.
Do you do a whole class on that?
On that sheet? No, we rely on those videos. Yeah.
Later.
Yeah.
And also too, if you guys can't find a YouTube video, I don't know if you guys heard the question, but it was, do we have a YouTube video on how to do those net sheets? There is a video on there. YouTube, you said it's.
Yeah, so what we have is a Google folder. Once everybody is licensed and they have their KW email, Irene sets that up for them, and in it, it is called PC bookmarks. You open it up and it's an Excel spreadsheet and it has every link you will need, and it links to the forms Melissa did as the broker, it links to the YouTube channels, like everything, so it's all, and your first one-on-one with me, we go over all of that.
Slick. That's awesome, you guys. I had no clue when I first got into real estate. Here's your desk and here's a manual. You can start teaching yourself. It's so awesome. Okay. The next thing you need to do once you're all executed is you need to notify the key players in the transaction. I like to say that there are 3 key players. There is your title company, the lender, and the co-op agent. So I'll talk about the co-op agent in a minute, but so when you get that executed purchase agreement, you want to get that sent off to your title company and lender. If you're on the buy side. If you're on the sell side, just your title company. You're going to want to make sure that they get everything executed. What I do as far as the co-op agent is I just say, hey, here are the dates that I have. It's just kind of a confirmation that this is what I have for closing date. This is what I have for written, this is what I have for the inspection date, just so that there's no confusion. This is what I have as the acceptance date, because if you have the acceptance date wrong, one agent thinks it's today and the other agent thinks it's yesterday, that's gonna throw off your inspection period and stuff like that. Use templates. It's very important if you guys are using, you're using out of your KW command, you can create templates so that you always have the template for your title and lender that's gonna say, here is the information. You're gonna wanna send information to them. So the title company is gonna wanna know who the lender is. The lender is gonna wanna know who the title company is. Your co-op agent's gonna, this is a lot of information that we have in a half hour, so I am so sorry.
It's just like we call it a fire hose, right? It's like just, you're not gonna remember all this stuff.
Yeah.
It's just an overview, and then once you have a transaction, you know that you have me and Tammy to go to.
Yes.
So that is the bottom line, and you have your study hall every Thursday, right?
Yes, yes. Okay, so after you send all of this out, if you're representing the seller, you're gonna request that from the front desk, or if you're using transaction services, the status to change, right? Because you're going from active to either active contingent inspection or active to pending, or whatever the case may be. We need to know that within 2 days of your accepted purchase agreement. So it does need to happen quickly. Our front desk is here on Saturdays and Sundays from 9 to 3. So just because it's a weekend, you can call them and ask them to change the status if you're representing the seller. The next thing you're gonna do is you're gonna create an opportunity if you don't already have one in Command. I recommend you create that opportunity the minute you start talking with either the buyer or the seller, so that it's already in there. But then you're gonna upload all of those documents into Command and you're gonna submit them to the Market Center. Maybe Melissa, you can add to this, but I like to wait until I have all of my documents. So if I'm missing something, I don't quite submit at that point.
I really don't have a preference either way. No.
You can either submit if you're missing something, you can use the @ sign to say, hey, I know I'm missing the seller net proceeds. I'm working on that, I'll get it uploaded. Because otherwise, when it gets reviewed, it will be noted that it's missing. Sending that trust funds link to your buyer. Right away, they need to have that if you're with earnest money. So they need to have that within 2 business days. of the accepted purchase agreement. So if it's accepted on a Friday, it's not due till Tuesday, so you do have time. Likewise, if it's accepted Monday, it's due on Wednesday. And then you're gonna aid with your buyer with scheduling their inspection. So, every agent does this a little differently. You might have somebody that you really, really like and you prefer to use that one. And you probably already had a conversation, bless you, with your buyer about, hey, you know, ABC Inspections is a really great company. This is what I love about them. I've used them often. You know, I certainly can recommend them or another. So you're gonna help them get that scheduled. All right. The next part is in the inspection period. So the first thing you want to do is you want to put that inspection deadline on your calendar, and don't forget it, because you need to have not only all inspections completed, but also any negotiations done before that deadline. You may choose to attend the inspection. I really like attending inspections. I think it's a good opportunity to learn, because I learned so much by going to inspections that it helps me be a better buyer's agent. So when I go into a home and I know what they're looking at, I know what the inspectors are looking at, I can look at the wood trim around a windowsill and see if it's rotting and say, ooh, this is gonna be a problem before they have the inspector look at it. But some agents prefer not to go to it. So whatever, that's fine. Once you get the inspection report, you're gonna wanna have that discussion with your buyer. Again, sellers really don't do anything in this. The one thing you wanna do is prepare your sellers for that inspection. Let them know it's gonna take like 3 hours, that to make sure that they have access to any outbuildings, the attic, things like that. So, and you wanna let them know not to be home, because I can tell you I've gone to lots of inspections where the sellers are home and it's really awkward when the inspector is tearing apart the house. Negotiate. So the next thing is depending on what's happening in your inspection, the next part is you're gonna really be looking at anything that's health and safety related, or hazardous, to have as part of your negotiations. So you'll write an amendment. If all parties sign and everything, you'll remove the contingency and now you're pending. If you're representing the seller, you're gonna then call the front desk or your TC and ask them to change the status of the listing. And if you're listing prep, if you're listing prep the buyers and sellers on inspection and radon. That's another thing that they don't understand. If they haven't sold a house in 30 years, they don't know what radon is. They don't know that they're gonna have 2 appointments, one to drop off the equipment and one to come back and pick it up. I really, really focus on prepping my buyers or my sellers for every situation. Then there's no surprises or no, oh, I didn't know this happened or this was gonna be an issue. Questions so far? Rolling on. All right, so once you get past your inspection period, you're now in the appraisal part of things. The lender, for the buyer, is now gonna order the appraisal. They don't do this until you reach that, until you've passed that inspection period, if you have one. Why? Because if you don't come to terms and cancel, they would have ordered that appraisal. It could potentially happen. Now the buyer is out that much money, $500 or whatever it is for the appraisal. So immediately, once you have completed your inspection period, you're gonna notify your lender. You're representing the buyer. You're gonna say, hey, we removed that inspection contingency. Can you please order us the appraisal? Why is this important? Because let's say you have 7, 8 days and you know within 3 days that you're removing that contingency. You wanna give your lender as much time as possible to get that appraisal ordered so you can close on time. You're to follow up with your lender. Let's see, follow up with your lender. Oh, okay. So I will follow up with my lender then, and I'll say, hey, do you know when that appraisal is scheduled? Because I want to keep track of when that happens. I want to make sure that we're getting this done. And I can tell you that there, depending on the lender, it can sometimes fall through the cracks, and all of a sudden you're like, what? The appraisal hasn't happened yet? We're in trouble. This is gonna mess my timeline up. So, and then I also, I will follow up about 7 to 8 business days after the appraisal actually happened. So most times lenders are gonna reach right out to the buyer and say, yeah, it appraised, and it might be a matter of finding out from the buyer. But most lenders will have that communication with you and let you know. Certainly you'll find out if it doesn't appraise. Once the appraisal is good, you're gonna submit the file to, this is when you're gonna wanna do your commissions in Command, and that's how you get paid. So I do it at this point because you might have negotiations in the inspection period, or if the appraisal doesn't come in at the right price, it could vary your purchase price of your home. So that's when I know, once appraisal is done, everything's pretty good. Now I can submit my commissions so that I can get paid once the checks have arrived. If you represent the seller, you're gonna know when that appraisal is happening, because they're gonna schedule, the appraiser's gonna schedule it through showing time most of the times, not always. You've got some old school appraisers that don't have access to showing time, and they just call the listing agent directly. But by knowing that, then you can also stay on top of it, because you wanna make sure that it appraises for the benefit of your seller as well. So you can reach out to that co-op agent, if you're representing the seller, and say, hey, I know inspection was such and such a date. Wondering if you heard back from your buyer's lender at this point. Questions on any of that? This is so awkward, I feel like. All right. A lot of stuff happens here. Once you get past this inspection part, this seems to be like, things quiet down, you're not really communicating. I'll have a slide here in a minute that talks about what to do during this. So 2 weeks before you close, you're gonna, if you have a written statement, you're representing the buyer, you're gonna make sure that you've got that date on your calendar. I find that sometimes lenders tend to forget about this, and I'm writing them, I'm reminding them maybe 3 or 4 days ahead of time, and then it comes to the date that it's due and I still don't have it. So it's up to you to make sure that you get that from the lender so that you can supply it to the seller. It's part of your purchase agreement. If you don't have it, obviously you don't have to worry about that.
It's not always a purchase agreement though, right?
If it's written in there, if it's not, then you won't have a written statement, right? Yeah. You want to notify your clients about utilities and changes of address. So if you're representing the buyer, what I do is, if they're moving to Apple Valley, I have a little folder of all utilities in every area. So, but if you don't, you can save the links, but look up Apple Valley. Oftentimes it'll take you to like their community website or whatever, and it'll say like, if you're moving here, you click on that link and it'll say, these are the utilities that are available in that area. That's what I send my buyers and say, hey, these are the utilities available in your area. Also, here's the link to change your mail. So I provide that for them so they don't have to search for it. And then once I've done one home in Apple Valley, like I said, I save it, the link to a folder, and then I always have it, and I don't have to look it up. So if you want to see what that looks like, come to a study hall, I'll show you. You also want to, though, notify your sellers. You want to make sure that you discontinue any utility payment, let them know the day you're closing. When you also send that email out to your buyers to say, hook up your utilities, make sure that they tell the utility company not to hook it up until the day of closing. Don't want to have it switched over right away, but they typically ask. Oftentimes too, they will ask I know that if you're representing the seller and the seller goes to discontinue, if the new buyer hasn't set up their new utilities yet, they're gonna ask you the last name of the buyer. So you wanna be able to provide that to your sellers ahead of time. If you're representing the buyer, you're gonna schedule that final walkthrough. Do that 2 weeks before, and schedule it 2 weeks before so that it's on your calendar. If you're representing the sellers, you wanna let them know, hey, the buyers are gonna schedule a final walkthrough. This is what's gonna happen in that final walkthrough. They're gonna make sure that the home is substantially in the same condition as when they saw it, and that there's no major damage, the appliances are all still working, blah, 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 blah. Prepare them for that. Let them know that it could be a day or two before closing, and that does not mean that they have to be out of the home. It does not mean that the home needs to be spotless. Sometimes sellers are like, but I'm not ready. That's not a requirement. You also prep your buyers for what to expect during that final walkthrough. The more you prep them, the less irritated they're gonna get when they find out that the oven has not been cleaned in 10 years and it's disgusting. I tell my buyers, don't expect that your idea of clean and their idea of clean is the same. You're not buying a brand new home. There are gonna be things, and we all like a fresh, new, clean house, and you probably don't wanna clean it your way anyway. I prep them, I tell them, expect to see nail holes, expect to see anchors stuck in the walls, that's in. And I don't know how many times I've taken buyers through final walkthroughs, and you can see the look on their face is much different than when they first saw the house. There's no furniture in it. It's not staged. So you're gonna be drawn to those things. If you can prepare them that that's gonna happen, you're gonna encounter less issues during and after. Make sure that if you had any negotiations, that you've collected the receipts. Does not mean that you have to have them 2 weeks prior, but you do want to make sure that you really have that on your radar if the listing agent hasn't sent you the receipts for any of the repairs that you've asked for. Make sure that you've ordered your home warranty by that time, if applicable. So if you're representing the buyer or seller or whoever's ordering the home warranty, you want to make sure that you get that home warranty ordered, and you're going to send that invoice to your lender and title company so that they know when they're doing all their numbers, who's paying for it, and if it's coming out of the seller proceeds or if it's coming out of the buyer, if the buyer needs to bring extra for closing costs. All right. I don't know if you can all see that at the bottom, but pre-closing, closing, and post-closing. So I consider this like the final week. And so I'm gonna ask my title company for the Ulta 2 days before my buyer or seller have to sign. You're gonna review it. You're not gonna know all of those numbers, but what you wanna make sure is, did they get the right broker admin fee in there? Did they get your commission right? Are they paying you 2.7% and not 2.5%? Those are things you want to catch on the forefront, because if they cut their checks at closing and you find out you didn't get paid what you were supposed to get paid, you're going to be disappointed, and it's going to take a while to get to do that. So you're going to want to make sure that. You're also going to look at your buyer or seller's numbers, make sure that the purchase price is what should be on from the purchase agreement and those types of things. If you're representing the buyer, you're going to attend that final walkthrough with them. At that time, or make arrangements for keys as a buyer's agent, I would always call the listing agent a couple days before that final walkthrough and say, hey, just want to remind you, we've got this final walkthrough. We're going to be coming through the home. Is it okay that I take a key or the key from the lockbox so I can present it to my buyer at closing? And they appreciate that, because that is less that they have to do and try to get the keys to it. I also say, hey, are you going to make sure that you let your seller know that the keys, any extra keys should be left in the kitchen, garage remotes, any garage codes? Yeah, you can change those, but wouldn't it be nice to know what the garage code is first before you have to, So, especially mailbox keys, I can't tell you how many times sellers forget to leave their mailbox key if they have one. So you kind of want to make sure that you talk to that co-op agent ahead of time. If you're obviously representing the seller, you're going to be having this conversation with your sellers. Closing gifts. You want to make sure that you have something to present to them. At closing, also a nice card, especially if you're getting something edible or a gift card or something that they, you know, hey, congratulations on your home, super excited for you. I know it's just the perfect fit. I know you guys have been looking for so long, blah, blah, blah. If you are attending the closing, bring Alta and check to the front. Oh, okay. Sometimes I forget what I wrote. If you're attending the closing, I always attend my buyers' closings. I always attend my sellers' pre-signings. It's just, I want to be there. That's the easiest day in the part of an agent. I want to be there to say congrats, whether it was, you know, seller or buyer. So if you are attending the buyer closing, you're going to bring they're going to give you the Ulta that is signed by the buyers and sellers, and the check. You're going to take that to the front desk so that they can process it, so you can get paid. If you are like, well, what do I do if I'm representing the seller? We pre-sign, we're not going to get a check. The title companies send checks to the listing brokerage, or you can swing by. You're going to know what time that closing is, and you should know what time that closing is for your sellers, because you want to make sure your sellers are out of the home by that time. So if it's Friday at 1 o'clock that the closing happens, that's when you're going to make sure to tell your sellers it's not Friday by the end of the day. The buyers will close at 1. You guys need to make sure that you're all out. I had a situation where that happened, where the sellers, we closed at like 2:30 in the afternoon. The buyers were super excited. They went to their brand new home. The sellers were all still there, still packing stuff up. Nothing more disappointing when it's your first home and you get there and you can't even get into your house. So really important for you to know that if you're on the south side too. And then post-close, so you want to make sure that you update command. Go into your each individual, like your contacts, put in their new address, put in their anniversary date, so you can send them a card every year and their closing. You're going to ask for reviews as well. All right, one final thing. These are my final tips for you. The difference between an addendum and an amendment. A lot of people get this wrong. The only time you use an addendum is when you're not executed. So if you are purchasing and you're going to add something in there on a separate piece of paper, that's in addition to the purchase agreement. Likewise, if you're doing a counter offer or you're changing something in the offer that was presented to you, you haven't signed, you haven't executed yet, but you need to add something in there. You forgot to tell the buyer's agent that you're related to the seller. That's an addendum. If it's executed, everybody's signed, paperwork is delivered, now we're going to change maybe the purchase price, or we're going to put in there that we forgot to let you know that we're related to the buyer or seller. That's an amendment. So an amendment changes, addendum adds to the purchase agreement. Anytime new documents are introduced into the transaction, you have to remember to get those to the key players. Send them to your title and lender. I have a little asterisk there because there are certain items that you might not send, like, hey, the buyers are gonna buy the seller's lawnmower for $1,000 and pay at closing. We don't necessarily have title and lender know about that. Those are small exceptions, but stop and think. Once you have a new executed amendment or something new added into the already existing purchase agreement, you need to make sure that you get those sent to those key players and uploaded into command. Communicate. I recommend that you do weekly updates with your clients. Hey, this is what happened this week. This is what's coming up. This is what, again, I like to really be proactive with my buyers because then it's less phone calls that I get at 9 o'clock at night unexpectedly. I rarely get those because I've told them everything. And if they do call, then they just didn't listen. Reach out to the lender and title regularly. Don't just assume that these guys are on their A game. Until you've worked with them regularly over and over again, you want to make sure that, you know, and it's okay to admit that you're a new agent. Hey, Mr. Lender, I'm just checking in. Is there anything you need at this point? Is there something I should be doing? How are we looking with underwriting? Are there any issues that I should know about? And you build up that reputation with them, or that rapport with them, and then it's now all of a sudden you're best friends, and you're talking 5% of the time about the buyer and 90% about what you did over the weekend. And then the co-op agent too. Don't be afraid to be reaching out to that co-op agent. How's everything going? If you're representing the seller, reach out to that co-op agent. Hey, I know the written statement's coming up. How's that looking? Are we gonna get that on time? I hate the term, don't fake it till you make it. Don't fake it till you make it. And here's why. It could cost you guys and your clients dearly. You don't know the answer. You should say, you know what? I think it might be this. Or you might say, I don't know. I'm pretty certain, but you know what? I work with 200 other agents in my office, and I'm gonna reach out to somebody, and I'm gonna make sure that I get you the right answer, and I'm gonna follow up with you. Ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask those questions. And then finally, for my own shameless plug, leverage. This is a lot of work that needs to be done from the start of a transaction to the closing. Not that you can't all do it, and not that maybe you don't enjoy it, but this is valuable time spent on the transaction that you could be utilizing to get other leads and listings and things like that. So.
Way to go.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You did it.
That's a lot,
Questions?
quick. Do
Yeah,
you
I
have
would-
copies of these notes? Like, are they posted anywhere? Is there a link to them? Are they in their
Do,
contact?
I can send it to you.
Yeah, I would
I'll
love to have
send you
access to
the whole final, I'll send you this one with all of my goal was to give you a blank page like this, and then we talk about it, and so we can interact, like I said, but with 30 minutes, there's no way we could have done that. So I'm basically just reading you stuff.
Yeah. I like it though.
But yes, I can send this to Jess, and then she can post it.
I'll put it in the folders. Okay. Awesome. Thank you. Tammy?
Well done.
Welcome.
All right, guys on Zoom, thank you for joining.
Oh my goodness.
And if you are able, there is a boot camp tomorrow, 10 to 12.
Do I get in trouble for not being able to go to that because I have an open house?
No, you're okay.
Because I know that we're supposed to do it like
It's not
4
rocket
times.
science. That's a lot.
Thank you.
See ya.
Yeah.